Chapter 34:15. Black Storm, Eternal Night, Demon Fox. When Yatan heard the Ghost Emperor's words, his eyes narrowed slightly. His divine sense immediately locked onto the Eternal Night, Demon Fox. However, the Demon Fox of Eternal Night did not sense any danger at this moment. It even called out, and made a face at Nyetian. Nyetian, the little demon fox's intelligence is still immature. You must find a way to borrow its psychic energy to find the spirit formation. The Ghost Emperor's voice sounded again. Nyetian furrowed his brows, looking troubled. He was connected to the Eternal Night Demon Fox's mind, but he could only use the latter's mind power indirectly. He really did not know how to use the Eternal Night Demon Fox's mind power directly. Boom, boom, boom. Right at this moment, the black, baleful ghost face struck out from the void once more. Like a raging tsunami, it roared out, wanting to devour everything in its path. Ghost Desolate, help me block these black, fiendish chi. Nyetian frowned and said in a low voice. Then, he closed his eyes and began to meditate. He began to interact with the Evernight Fox's spiritual space. If he wanted to borrow the Eternal Night Demon Fox's mind energy, he had to stay focused and not be distracted. Only then could he succeed. Desolate Ghost Boundless turned to look at Nyetian. He did not ask anything and agreed immediately. The renegade god Rakshasa in his hand struck out. His spear was like a dragon, directly dissipating the incoming black aura. Boom, boom. At the same time, Nie Fenghua and Bailey Xingxue also made their moves. Two vigorous sword shadows, like giant beasts, forcibly blocked the impact of the black fiendish chi. The three of them formed a triangular formation, protecting Nyetian in the center, not allowing the black fiendish chi to approach. Boundless Ghost and the other two were already at pseudo-sage pinnacle, so it was not too difficult for them to forcefully block the malevolent black chi. However, as the malevolent black energy continued to attack them, the three of them gradually felt their stamina running out. As for the malevolent black faces, they were devouring their attacks, becoming stronger and stronger. Under such circumstances, the three of them were slowly unable to hold on any longer. What was even worse was that the howls of the black fiend ghost faces had a great impact on their divine senses. The three of them became very mentally exhausted. GGG. At this moment, a mass of black malevolent chi appeared, sweeping over like a raging wave. Its aura could devour the heavens, and it was incomparably violent. It was like a gigantic beast with its mouth wide open, wanting to devour everything in its path. Damn it. Desolate Ghost sensed that the black baleful chi's attack this time was far more powerful than before. He couldn't help but let out a low roar, following which countless astral runes gushed out of his body, condensing into a giant azure dragon in the air. When Ye Fenghua and Bailey Xingxue saw this scene, they couldn't help but look at each other. Obviously, they didn't expect the Boundless Ghost Desolate to have such a terrifying move. Roar! The azure dragon astral soul appeared and let out a furious roar. The roar of a dragon resounded throughout the entire night. Boom! In the next instant, the body of the azure dragon astral soul rumbled as its gigantic tail swept out, forcefully breaking apart the terrifying black baleful chi. Upon seeing this, Nie Fenghua and Bailey Xingxue let out a long breath of foul air. With the protection of the azure dragon astral soul, they should be able to hold on for some time. But now, the most crucial thing was still Nyetian. At this moment, Nyetian's eyes were tightly shut, his entire body was drenched in sweat, and his face was as pale as paper. Evidently, he had overexerted his mental energy. Nie Fenghua and the rest didn't know what Nyetian was doing, but at this moment, they chose to believe in Nyetian. At this moment, under the control of the Boundless Ghost Astral Soul, the Azure Dragon Astral Soul's gigantic body revolved around the four of them, becoming a gigantic shield that resisted the onslaught of the black baleful chi. These ants can really persevere. And at this moment, the Jioshuan Overlord, who was hidden in the darkness, stared at Nyetian and the rest. The corners of his mouth twitched as he laughed sinisterly. He didn't expect that Nyetian and the rest would actually be able to persevere until now under the terrifying black baleful chi. One must know that the devouring ability of the black baleful chi was extremely strong, and it was extremely damaging to the martial body of a cultivator. Moreover, the black baleful chi could fuse with the boundary runes to form a black sand ghost face, which would cause a mental attack to the cultivator. Ordinary rank 9 pseudo sacred experts wouldn't be able to resist the black baleful chi at all and would be instantly devoured. But the fact that Nyetian and the rest could persevere until now was beyond Jiushuan Overlord's expectations. Mmph. At this moment, Jiushuan Overlord smiled sinisterly and said, "At this stage, this game is already meaningless. It's time to end it." Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, he clasped his hands together and formed a strange seal. Then, in the dark void, the endless black baleful chi suddenly became violent, condensing into an incomparably huge black baleful storm in the air. Rumble! The black baleful storm was like a violent dragon, incomparably terrifying. Waves of dark aura surged crazily, like burning black flames. The black baleful storm roared violently, rolling and roaring, shrouding the azure dragon astral soul. Oh no! The boundless ghost astral soul's eyes trembled slightly, and he cursed inwardly. He glanced at Nyetian. The latter's eyes were still closed, as if he had entered a certain state. His aura didn't fluctuate at all, and his entire person was as calm as water. Fight! The boundless ghost astral soul's eyes darkened, and with a low roar, the azure dragon astral soul suddenly soared into the sky, its huge body tumbling in the void, causing the space to tremble unceasingly. Rather than waiting for death, why not fight to the death? Rumble! In the next moment, the azure dragon astral soul collided with the black baleful storm, causing a terrifying explosion. The void trembled, as if the heavens and earth were being torn apart. Instantly, a terrifying shockwave spread out, as if wanting to devour everything. At this moment, the boundless ghost astral soul did not retreat, but instead advanced. He directly took a step forward, and the god-defying Rakshasa attacked again, blasting towards the black baleful storm. Boom! Bang, bang, bang. Instantly, the black baleful storm finally collapsed, turning into waves of black baleful chi that dissipated. Nia Fenghua and Bailey Xingxue both acted at the same time, blocking the black baleful storm. Pooh! But at this moment, the boundless ghost astral soul's body trembled, and he violently coughed out a mouthful of blood. His countenance instantly turned as pale as paper. That black baleful storm was too powerful and directly injured him. "Are you all right?" Bailey Xingxue stepped forward, supporting the boundless ghost astral soul as he asked anxiously. "I'm fine." The boundless ghost astral soul wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and let out a long breath of turbid air. Interesting. In the dark void, the corners of Sovereign Jiu Xin's mouth twitched, and his eyes became even colder. He said coldly, "You little shrimps do have some skills, but it's a pity that everything will end here." Boom, boom, boom. As the sound of his cold voice faded, 3 black, baleful storms appeared in the void at the same time. They were like 3 black dragons, bringing with them a tyrannical aura that could devour everything, crazily pressing down on Nyetian and the rest. The boundless ghost astral soul trembled when he saw this scene, and his countenance turned sluggish. Blocking 1 black baleful storm had almost exhausted all of his strength. Now that 3 black baleful storms had appeared, how could he resist them? Nie Fenghua and Bailey Xingxue were both stunned. No matter how calm they could not help but reveal fear at this moment. "Let me." At this moment, a low voice was heard, and it was filled with extreme confidence. Chapter 34:16. Enter the forbidden area, Nyetian. Desolate ghost group of 3 suddenly heard Nyetian's voice. Their eyes trembled, and they were overjoyed. "Hide in the 9 superbs, and leave the rest to me." Nyation glanced at the 3 of them, and his lips twitched. He opened the 9 extremities and forcefully released a beam of space-time light. Desolate Ghost Boundless and the other 2 did not hesitate and immediately entered the 9 extreme. Boom! Rumble! Boom! At this moment, 3 black tornadoes descended. Their violent auras seemed as though they were going to devour the entire world. Buzz! Nyation's eyes narrowed slightly. He abruptly raised the 7 Despair demon sword and let out a vigorous sword cry in the air. Immediately after, a sword shadow whizzed out, and a sharp sword light cut through the darkness, incomparably dazzling. Boom! In the next instant, the sword shadow fell, and the black fiendish storm was directly smashed. Boom! Boom! At the same time, the other 2 black fiendish storms descended, instantly drowning Nyation. Oof! When Jiuquan, who was hiding in the dark, saw this scene, he smiled coldly and said disdainfully, "I was wondering how powerful you were, but it turns out that you are only so." Really? Just as he was about to finish his sentence, a deep voice rang out. Then, something shocking happened. Bang! Bang! The 2 black fiendish storms in the void shook violently and directly collapsed. A figure walked out from the vast black fiendish aura. It was Nyation. How is this possible? Emperor Jiuxian's eyes suddenly trembled. He couldn't believe the scene in front of him. Nyation was actually able to survive the black demon storm. This was simply impossible. The pressure and strangling power within the black fiend storm was hard to imagine. How could Nyation possibly survive? Just how powerful was Nyation's martial body? Emperor Jiuquan, can you still hide? Nyation took a step forward, and 9 heavenly Tao shackles appeared behind him like a giant 9-headed snake. He could survive in the black demon storm not only because of his powerful martial body, but also because of the power of the heavenly Tao shackles. The power of the heavenly Tao had a strong restraining and resistance effect on the power of the dark attribute. It was precisely because of the heavenly Tao shackles that Nyation could resist the black demon storm. Sovereign Jiuquan's eyes couldn't help but tremble as he looked at Nyation. He actually felt an extremely strong sense of threat. At this moment, he was hiding in the void tens of thousands of meters away from Nyation. How could Nyation possibly sense him? In a night enchantment, all martial artists' senses were limited to a few dozen meters away. Tian, that Nyation has a Tian dong even more. Tian, suddenly, however, Tian Saint San Xian, Super Dong. Sovereign Venerable Jiu Xian's pupils shrank involuntarily when he sensed the surging, murderous aura. He was stunned for a moment. He had never expected that Nyation would be able to sense his presence and charge towards him without any hesitation. Die! In the void, Nyation's voice rang out. It was deep and murderous, like a death knell ringing in Sovereign Jiuquan's ears. Boom! In the next instant, Nyation slashed out with his sword, and a deadly sword shadow whizzed out. The pressure caused the surrounding void to tremble violently, as if the heaven and earth were about to collapse. Sovereign Venerable Jiuxian sensed the sharp, blade-like sword intent enveloping him, causing his expression to change. Only then did he react and hurriedly make a move. However, it was too late. Boom! The sword shadow was like a mountain, crashing down. Sovereign Jiuxian didn't even have the chance to resist. He died instantly, and not even his bones were left. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that he would die in the hands of Nyation in such a manner. Even until his death, he didn't understand how Nyation had found him. Without the Dark Knight boundary, you can't even block one of my swords. Nyation killed Sovereign Jiuquan in a domineering manner. He sneered, and then his figure moved. Like a giant dragon, he thrust his sword into the void. Boom! Boom, boom, boom. Where the sword shadow fell, there was a loud bang in the void, and the Dark Knight boundary was directly shattered. The dark time and space disappeared, and the heaven and earth regained their clarity. Nya Tianling stood high in the sky, like a sharp sword. It took him nearly an hour to finally connect with the eternal night demonic fox's spiritual space. With the latter's spiritual power, he directly engraved the holographic projection of the entire dark night boundary. With the holographic projection, Sovereign Jiuquan could no longer hide. As for the eye of the boundary, Nye Tian could see at a glance. High in the sky, when the 9 great protectors saw Nye Tian's figure appear, their expressions changed at the same time, and they all exclaimed in surprise. They didn't expect Nye Tian to be able to break Sovereign Jiuquan's dark night boundary. Just now, they were also trapped in the dark night boundary, and they personally felt the horror of the dark night boundary. Even they found it difficult to break the dark night boundary. So how did Nye Tian do it? It's your turn. Nye Tian's eyes were low, and he glanced coldly at the 9 great protectors. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he said coldly, "Boy, with your strength alone, do you want to fight against the 9 of us?" The chief protector sneered. Although he looked arrogant on the surface, his eyes were cold, and he was obviously a little nervous. Since Nye Tian appeared, the power that he had shown was too strange, and he had to take it seriously. Since the appearance of Nye Tian, the power that he had shown was too strange, and he had to take it seriously. He couldn't figure out how an 8-stage pseudo-saint martial artist could have such terrifying power. In my eyes, the 9 of you are no different from chickens and dogs. Nye Tianling sneered, and the sword essence all over his body surged wildly, and he was extremely arrogant. "Boy, you're too arrogant." One of the sect masters let out a bellow and flew into a rage. He blurred an emotion and threw a palm strike towards Nye Tian. "You're courting death." The corner of Nye Tian's mouth twitched cold, and he said coldly. He swung his sword, and a terrifying sword shadow swept everything in its path and directly shattered the palm shadow. Bang! In the next instant, a dull thud was heard, and the protector was sent flying, drawing a bloody line in the air. 7th brother. The chief protector was stunned by the scene before him, and he immediately reacted and exclaimed. Nye Tian was too terrifying. The power of a casual swing of his sword was enough to kill a peak 9th-stage martial artist. His strength had far surpassed an ordinary peak martial artist of the Myriad territory. Most importantly, his current strength was only an 8th-stage pseudo-saint. "Big brother, I'm fine." At that moment, the 7th-rank protector stood in the air, and his body was covered in blood, but his aura was strong, and he was fine. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed, and he looked at the protector. He could sense that there was a terrifying evil force in the protector's body. There's no need to waste time with them. Let's enter the forbidden area first. In the next moment, Nye Tian's eyes flickered, and he looked at the entrance of the 9 profound forbidden area, and he could sense a terrifying forbidden formation. But with his current perception, he could see where the formation core was at a glance. Then, Nye Tian's figure moved, and a pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back. Like a ray of light, he flew toward the 9 profound forbidden area. Boom! In the air, he slashed down with his sword, and wherever the sword shadow landed, the forbidden formation collapsed. In the next instant, his figure shot into the forbidden area like a rainbow and disappeared in an instant. Chapter 34:17. Immortal Body. Upon seeing Nye Tian enter the 9 profound forbidden land, the chief sect keeper instantly panicked, his wrinkled face frozen in place. Nye Tian's movements were too fast. The head protector didn't even have time to react before Nye Tian entered the zone. The fact that Nye Tian had forced the 7th sect protector back with a single sword strike had shocked the other sect protectors so much that they were all flabbergasted. "Big brother, that kid has entered the forbidden zone." The 2nd protector appeared and looked at the head protector in shock. They had never expected that Nye Tian would enter the 9 Xian forbidden zone. "I know." The head defender's eyes suddenly trembled, and he growled. He seemed to be panicking a little. "Big brother, what should we do now?" The 2nd protector asked nervously. "The 9 Xian forbidden zone is the #1 forbidden zone in our sect. Apart from the sect leader, no one is allowed to enter. The other protectors walked over. The third protector frowned and said, "That kid is too strange. He actually broke through the forbidden formation." It's useless to say anything now. Our Lord is currently cultivating in the 9 mysterious blood spring. This time, he specially sent the 9 of us to guard the forbidden area and prevent anyone from entering. If that brat forcefully enters and disrupts our Lord's cultivation, then it'll be troublesome. The fourth guardian's face was gloomy as he spoke in horror. "Big brother, what should we do?" The other protectors looked at the head protector and waited for him to make a decision. They had already neglected their duty by letting Niet Tian enter the 9 Xian forbidden zone. If Niet Tian were to disrupt the sect leader's cultivation, it would be even worse. "Let's enter the forbidden zone together. We must kill that kid before he enters the 9 Xian blood spring." The head protector finally made a decision after a few seconds of silence. The other protectors' eyes trembled, but no one objected. They all nodded. They had guarded the 9 Xian forbidden zone for thousands of years. It would be a lie if they said they didn't want to enter the forbidden zone. Now that Niet Tian had entered the forbidden zone, it was the best time for them to enter. "Let's go." The head protector's eyes lit up. Without hesitation, he was the first to rush into the forbidden zone. The other apologists followed suit. At the same time, in the 9 mystical forbidden grounds, Niet Tian stood in the void and looked at everything in front of him. He could not help but be stunned. The restricted area was filled with an incomparably dense and bloody aura, whereas the ground was covered in piles of bones and corpses. The entire world was filled with the aura of death. Niet Tian was stunned by the scene in front of him and only reacted after a long time. "What is this place? Why are there so many corpses?" He frowned, and his expression was extremely gloomy. There were at least millions of corpses below, and it might even be more. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the entire world to be filled with such a strong smell of blood. This so-called 9 profound forbidden area actually had so many corpses. It was truly shocking. At this moment, Niet Tian suddenly sensed a strong and pungent smell of blood coming from afar, and he couldn't help but frown. "Over there." Then he suddenly raised his head and saw a crimson cloud floating high up in the sky. The smell of blood was coming from that direction. "Let's go and take a look." Without hesitation, Niet Tian summoned the wings of the astral soul and flew in the direction of the crimson cloud. Boom! However, right at this moment, he suddenly felt a terrifying oppressive force appear behind him. It actually wanted to directly suppress him. Niet Tian spun around, only to see a huge palm coming at him from all directions. In an instant, he reacted. Sword intent surged from his body, and he stabbed out with the demonic sword of 7 despair. The void trembled, and the shadow of a sword whizzed out. Boom! The palm and the sword collided, and the void trembled. A violent force exploded and turned into rolling waves that surged into the void. Niet Tian's figure retreated dozens of meters before he could stabilize himself. At this moment, several figures landed at the same time. It was the 9 protectors who surrounded him. 9 protectors, how troublesome. Niet Tian glanced at the 9 protectors, and his eyes darkened with murderous intent. "You brat, you trespassed into the forbidden area of my protectors. Die." At this moment, the 3rd protector roared and moved. He slammed down with his palm, and the void sunk. Suddenly, a mountain-like shadow of a palm pressed down on Niet Tian. "You're courting death." Niet Tian's eyes narrowed, and a cold light flashed. The demonic chi of the demonic sword of 7 despair increased, and the sword intent in his body increased to the maximum. He slashed out with his sword, and the shadow of the sword shook the sky. Boom! The shadow of the sword was like a dragon that bombarded the 3rd protector. The terrifying sword intent exploded, and the shadow of the palm collapsed. Then, the shadow of the sword attacked the 3rd protector. The 3rd protector screamed in pain, and his entire body was flung out. His body was covered in blood. Damn it! However, his body stabilized in the air, and he growled. It seemed like he was not injured. Niet Tian frowned and felt strange. He used his divine sense to check the third protector's body and found that there was a strange and powerful force inside the third protector's body. It was like a wild beast, extremely violent. And at this moment, a shocking scene happened. The skin all over the third sect keeper's body began to peel off. Furthermore, it was completely peeling off. His body turned black and was covered by a layer of horny armor. It looked very strange, and he looked like a human-shaped pangolin. Eyebrows furrowed. Nyation let out a cold laugh and said, "From the look of it, this is your true appearance. That layer of skin is just a decoration." Previously, he had sent the seventh protector flying with a single slash. The seventh protector was not seriously injured. The third protector was the same. Although he looked bloody, he was not injured at all. "Brat, you are not that stupid after all," the third protector said coldly. His voice changed and became deep and hoarse. It sounded very ear-piercing. He said, "The 9 of us have cultivated the 9 mystic forbidden art. The armor I am wearing is the 9 mystic forbidden armor. Apart from sacred realm cultivators, no cultivator can break the 9 mystic forbidden armor. Besides, the 9 mystic forbidden armor can absorb the blood chi of cultivators. With the 9 mystic forbidden armor, the 9 of us are immortal. You are just an 8th-rank pseudo-sacred. What makes you think you can fight the 9 of us? Today, you are destined to be buried here." Ha ha ha. As he finished speaking, the third sect protector actually roared with laughter, and his gaze was murderous, low, and gloomy. The 9 mystic forbidden armor was the reason why the 9 of them could live longer than godly realm cultivators. Not only was the 9 mystic forbidden armor extremely tough, but it could also absorb the blood chi of other cultivators, allowing the 9 protectors to live forever. However, the 9 mystic forbidden armor had its flaws too. It would replace the cultivator's original skin, making the cultivator look like neither a human nor a ghost. Chapter 34:18. Unable to withstand a single blow, the 9 protectors possessed the 9 forbidden armor, which was equivalent to an immortal body. This was why the third protector dared to be so arrogant. An immortal body? Nyation looked at the third sect master, who was still laughing, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. He said coldly, "I want to see if your so-called undying body can really be undying." Then, a drop of blood spurted out from his fingertip and landed on the demonic sword of Seven Demise. Boom! Instantly, the demonic sword of Seven Demise was triggered by the blood of the demon god and released a terrifying demonic aura. "I'll destroy your immortal body with one slash." In the next moment, Nyation's eyes grew cold, and he fixed them on the third sect keeper with a pair of murderous eyes. He did not believe that there was an immortal body in this world. What he believed in was power. As long as one's power was strong enough, any immortal body would die. Presumptuous! The third protector was enraged when he sensed the disdain and murderous intent in Nyation's eyes. He roared and his body shook violently. Waves of dark 9 forbidden force were released and enveloped them. From afar, the third protector looked like a dark abyss. Very good. The corner of Nyation's lips twitched when he sensed the third protector's aura. Then, he said disdainfully, "However, it's still not enough." The third protector's aura was several times stronger than before. The dark aura released by the 9 forbidden force was especially terrifying, as if it was going to devour the heavens and earth. Unfortunately, this aura was not enough to shock Nyation. The other protectors watched from the side without making a move. They were very confident in the third protector. Dying. At that moment, Nyation let out a bellow and sprang into action. The 7 Absolute's demon sword shone with dazzling light, and streams of terrifying demon chi surged out of it, condensing into a terrifying sword projection in midair. Boom! The sword's shadow was like a raging dragon, causing the void to tremble incessantly, and the whole world to tremble violently. Nyation had already activated the divine soul of divine evolution, and his sword was activated to the extreme. The eyes of the other apologists trembled when they saw this. They clearly did not expect Nyation to be so terrifying. Boom! In the next instant, the demonic chi sword shadow descended like a black bolt of lightning towards the third protector. The third sect protector, who had the 9 mysterious forbidden armor, did not dodge at all. His figure flashed, and he directly charged forward. The 9 profundities' forbidden energy raged like a raging storm. Boom! In the next moment, the 2 terrifying forces collided, causing the space to tremble. Waves of terrifying energy surged out, wreaking havoc in the space. This kid is so strong. The other guardians were shocked by the scene in front of them. None of them had expected Nietian to be so terrifyingly strong. Boom! At that moment, the sword will of the demonic chi sword shadow exploded. The sword will was extremely sharp, and it tore apart the 9 mysterious forbidden energy on the third sect protector's body. The eyes of the other guardians trembled violently. They were so shocked that they couldn't speak. Bang! At that moment, there was a muffled sound in the air, and the third sect protector's body was sent flying. Crack, crack, crack! While he was still in mid-air, the 9 mysterious forbidden armor on his body cracked, and blood gushed out of it. This time, the third sect protector was truly covered in blood. The other guardians were stunned by the scene in front of them, and they could not react for a long time. Third brother. The head sect protector was the first to react. He let out a scream and flew towards the third sect protector. Big brother, Boom! The third sect protector stabilized his body, and his expression was one of extreme pain. He looked at the head sect protector, as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. His body shook violently, and he was smashed into pieces in mid-air. The bloody scene caused the eyes of the other sect protectors to quiver, and they were all petrified. The third sect protector, one of the 9 guardians of the 9 mystic sect, a super monster who had lived for nearly 10 million years, had died tragically. The other guardians could not believe what they had just seen, and they were even more shocked. Nietian only had the strength of an 8th stage pseudo-sage. How could he have broken the 9 mysterious forbidden energy? Could it be that his strength was stronger than a Sage Realm Martialist? The 9 Guardians did not know how strong a Sage Realm Martialist was because they had never seen one before. However, the first leader of the 9 Mystic Sect had told them that as long as they mastered the 9 mysterious forbidden energy, only a Sage Realm Martialist could kill them. Since Nietian could kill the third sect protector, did that mean that his strength was stronger than a Sage Realm Martialist? But how is that possible? He only had the strength of an 8th stage pseudo-sage. Is this your so-called undying body? At this time, Nietian sneered and arrogantly spat out 4 words. You can't even withstand a single blow. Third brother. At this time, the sect protector finally reacted. His pupils constricted, and he roared. He turned around and stared at Nietian. His eyes were bloodshot. Third brother. Third brother. Then, the other guardians came to their senses and roared in unison. Their chi was released crazily and shot up into the sky. The 9 guardians had lived together for nearly 10 million years, and they were closer than brothers. Nietian had actually killed the third sect protector. How could the other guardians not be angry? However, Nietian was too terrifying. One sword, just one sword strike had killed the third sect protector. Facing the 8 furious guardians, Nietian was not afraid at all. Instead, he said coldly, "He deserves 1 sword strike from me. How many sword strikes do you think you deserve? Brad, I'll kill you." However, it was at this moment that the chief sect keeper was completely enraged. With a fierce roar, he unleashed the 9 profound restrictive power and thrust his palm out. Instantly, a terrifying ghostly claw descended, causing the void to tremble as it shot towards Nietian. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, the other sect masters also made their moves. One after another, they launched terrifying attacks towards Nietian in a frenzy. The void rumbled, as if the sky and earth were about to collapse. The strength of the 8 guardians far exceeded that of an ordinary peak martialist. It was easy to imagine how strong they were when they attacked together. However, Nietian's face was as calm as still water, and there wasn't the slightest ripple in his eyes. Sacred heaven-defying sword, unity of earth and moon, sinking star. In the next instant, his lips twitched. His body shook violently, and his blood chi and sword intent surged out at the same time. A terrifying sword intent soared into the sky. At this time, the sword intent that Nyetian had unleashed was unprecedentedly strong. This time, not only did he use the power of the sky evolution's sacred spirit, but he also ignited his blood chi. Chapter 34:19. 9 mysterious bloods. Spring. Nyetian no longer held anything back against the combined attack of the 8 sect protectors. He used the Sky Spill Saint's soul, the Fiend God blood chi, and the Omniscient Saint's soul at the same time. He had obtained the Omniscient Tribulation Saint's soul from a 9 Tribulations Xian Venerable not too long ago. He had just fused with it, so he was not too familiar with this power. But at this time, he couldn't care too much. Nyetian felt that since the Sky Evolution Saint's soul could activate Sword Will, then the Omen Tribulation Saint's soul, which was also one of the 9 Ancient Saint souls, should also be able to activate Sword Will. His guess was correct. At this moment, the sword intent that erupted from him was indeed unprecedentedly powerful. However, the pressure on his martial body was also unprecedentedly great. I'll kill you first. At this time, Nyetian's eyes suddenly darkened and locked on the chief defender cold. Boom! In the next moment, he slashed out with his sword, and a huge sword shadow appeared in the void. Outside the sword shadow, there was a terrifying demonic flame burning fiercely as if it wanted to burn everything. Rumble. Bang, bang, bang. In the next moment, the attacks of the 8 protectors landed on the enormous sword shadow. An endless amount of berserk power erupted in an instant. Explosions sounded continuously in the void. The wind and clouds surged and the sky changed color. However, the very next moment, the enormous sword silhouette suddenly unleashed a frightening power. Like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, it directly shattered the attacks of the 8 great apologists. At this moment, the head defender suddenly felt danger approaching and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Boom! Then, the horrifying shadow of the sword fell. The head protector didn't have time to react. His body was submerged, and nothing was left of him. Nyetian had fought against the 8 sect protectors all by himself. Not only had he easily blocked the 8 of them, but he had also killed the leader of the sect protectors. His strength was evident. The leader of the 9 great sect protectors became the second person to die after the 3rd sect protector. The remaining 7 people were completely shocked by the scene before them, causing them to let out cries of astonishment. Their gazes toward Nyetian were no longer filled with anger, but with fear. They wanted to take revenge, but Nyetian's sword strike just now told them that it was impossible to do so. Nyetian was too powerful. Run. At that moment, the second protector was the first to react. His eyes trembled, and his figure instantly moved, retreating backwards. Then, the other apologists' eyes trembled, and they also retreated. It's too late to escape now. When Nyetian saw this, his lips curled into a cold smile. Like a rainbow, he dashed toward the 7 protectors. He didn't want to tangle with the 9 great sect protectors, but since they had followed him into the Forbidden Land, they couldn't blame him. Bang! 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 Nyetian moved like lightning, leaving a trail of blood wherever he went. Several muffled sounds echoed through the void as the 7 sect protectors died miserable deaths. The 9 mystical sects, 9 great protectors, and 5 supremes had all died at the hands of Nyetian. Actually, if these 7 sect protectors were able to unite and fight against Nyetian again, it would be hard to say who would win. Unfortunately, they were afraid. After killing the 7 sect protectors, Nyetian's body trembled and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face turned pale. Using the Sky Evolution Saint Spirit and the Omniscient Saint Spirit at the same time had put his martial body under great pressure. Even though his martial body was strong, he couldn't withstand it. However, Nyetian didn't waste any time. After swallowing a few godly pills, he flew toward the blood cloud. Nietion's speed was extremely fast. In an instant, he arrived outside the blood cloud. At that moment, he could clearly see that the blood cloud was actually formed by the condensation of evil blood chi. Below the blood-red clouds was a huge blood-red abyss. Waves of blood-red aura seemed to be boiling as they continuously rushed out of the blood-red abyss. Nietion frowned as he looked down at the blood abyss and said in a deep voice, "It seems like the evil blood chi is coming from the blood abyss. Could it be that the 9 Mysteries sect leader is in the blood abyss?" After thinking for a while, Nietion didn't hesitate too much. He took a deep breath and recovered some of his energy. Then his figure moved, and he headed toward the blood abyss. As he entered the blood abyss, he instantly felt an extremely strong, evil blood chi rushing toward him. It was like a sharp blade that wanted to penetrate his body. What a strong, evil blood chi. What exactly is at the bottom of the blood abyss? Nietion frowned as he became more cautious. Then, the closer he got to the bottom of the blood abyss, the stronger the evil blood chi became. Even though he activated the Star Soul Shield, he couldn't stop the evil blood chi from invading him. He could sense that there was an extremely strong evil aura within the bloody aura, causing his heart to tremble slightly. However, he and the Eternal Night Demon Fox's divine consciousness were connected. This kind of spiritual chi didn't pose any threat to him. Nietion continued to descend to the bottom of the blood abyss. Soon, he realized that the blood abyss was becoming longer and longer. The evil blood chi in the air made him feel suffocated. What is this? It was at that moment that Nietion discovered that numerous enormous iron chains were hanging from the stone walls on either side of the abyss. The iron chains were covered in dense magical symbols, which looked very mysterious and dark at the same time. "It seems to be some kind of curse from the ancient times," the Ghost Emperor said in a deep voice. Nietion frowned. He scanned his surroundings and discovered that there were 9 chains hanging on the walls. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Then, he started to descend along the chains. After a while, Nietion's eyes widened. He saw that the 9 chains extended all the way to the bottom of the blood abyss. The moment he looked at the bottom of the abyss, he felt an extremely ferocious aura rush towards him. It actually caused his soul sense to tremble and almost collapse. At that moment, he felt as if he had fallen into a bottomless abyss. Phew! Nietion let out a long breath and forced himself to calm down. He used his divine consciousness to sense the bottom of the blood abyss. He saw that the bottom of the blood abyss was covered with a layer of blood-colored mist. The evil blood chi was coming from the mist. He furrowed his brows and flew down without hesitation. In the blink of an eye, Nietion arrived above the blood-colored mist. He was only a few dozen meters away from it. At that moment, Nietion found it hard to breathe due to the overwhelming blood chi that assaulted his face. Nietion became cold. His eyes darkened, and he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. He saw that below the blood-colored mist was not the ground, but tumbling blood. Blood spring. His eyes flickered, and he couldn't help but exclaim. It turned out that the blood-colored mist was a layer of blood mist that covered the blood spring. The blood spring was really formed by blood. Nietion could clearly sense the pungent blood chi. However, the blood chi contained a dark, evil chi that was extremely foul. Could this blood spring be formed by the blood of those who died here? At this moment, Nietion suddenly remembered the piles of bones he saw when he first entered the 9 Xian Forbidden Area. His eyes narrowed and his heart trembled. Chapter 34:20. Berserk Nietion. Nietion suddenly felt the bloody aura rushing towards him. His eyes narrowed involuntarily as he let out a cry of surprise. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, the 9 heavenly Tao shackles in Nietion's body shot out and formed a shield of heavenly Tao around his body to protect him. Rumble. Chi, chi, chi. Following which, the violent bloody aura rushed over but was blocked by the shield of heavenly Tao. After a while, when the blood spring had stabilized, Nietion slowly released the shield of heavenly Tao. He actually blocked the 9 mysterious karma. At this time, a low voice came from the blood spring again. It was cold and hoarse, and it echoed throughout the bloody space. It was extremely strange. This person seemed to be very surprised that Nietion had actually blocked his attack. "You are the 9 mysterious sect leader?" Nietion's eyes darkened as he spoke. His divine sense pierced through the layers of blood mist, and he saw that there was indeed a figure sitting in the blood spring. The figure was dark red, as if it had become one with the blood spring. "Who are you?" The figure spoke again. Although his tone was unyielding, there was a trace of nervousness in his voice. Nietion's guess was right. This figure was the 9 mysterious sect leader. Apart from the dead, only the 9 mysterious sect leader could enter the 9 mysterious forbidden ground. At this moment, the 9 mysterious sect leader was cultivating in the 9 mysterious blood spring. The 5 supremes and 9 great protectors were guarding the 9 mysterious forbidden ground to buy time for him to cultivate. "The person who will take your life." Nietion immediately confirmed the 9 mysterious sect leader's identity. His lips curled into a cold smile, and his eyes were incomparably cold. "You're Nietion?" The 9 mysteries sect master suddenly came to a realization, frowning as he exclaimed, "You're Nietion? Where's Mo Rushi?" Nietion's eyes darkened as he asked cold, "Your wife?" The 9 mystical sect leader replied coldly. With a cold smile on his face, he continued, "She has already been killed by me." "You killed him?" When Nietion heard the 9 profound sect leader's words, his pupils constricted and his heart trembled. Every inch of blood in his body seemed to burn. "That's right," the 9 mysteries sect master said with a cold smile. "Your wife, Mo Rushi, was killed by me, and I also killed the baby in her womb." "Nietion, that baby was your flesh and blood, wasn't it?" Nietion's eyes trembled and his body trembled slightly. At this moment, he felt as if his heart had been pierced by thousands of sharp blades. It was an incomparably excruciating pain, as if his heart had been hollowed out. His eyes instantly turned pitch black, and the extreme demon annihilation mark appeared at the corners of his eyes. At the same time, a drop of tear appeared at the corner of his eye. Inside the 9 mysterious blood spring, the 9 mysterious school sect leader actually felt a chilling, killing intent assaulting his senses. His expression couldn't help but change. In the next moment, he felt a wave of killing intent appear, causing him to shiver with a bone-chilling coldness. In an instant, he felt extremely helpless, as if his life no longer belonged to him. "You deserve to die." At this moment, Nietion suddenly roared. His entire body's aura exploded, and his entire body was like a ferocious beast as he charged straight towards the 9 mysterious blood spring. "Stinking brat, are you crazy?" The 9 profound sect leader was so shocked by the scene that he immediately let out a low growl. However, at this moment, Nietion's figure had already charged into the 9 mysterious blood spring. Boom, boom, boom. In the blink of an eye, the entire 9 mysterious blood spring seemed to have been stimulated. It started to roar like a ferocious beast. Waves of blood-colored energy surged outwards, and the bloody aura in the air suddenly became incomparably violent. The entire abyss shook as if it was about to collapse. At that moment, the sect master of the 9 mysteries sect saw Nietion charging towards him like a sharp blade. This scene caused his eyes to tremble and his entire body to freeze. He couldn't imagine how Nietion was able to withstand the 9 mysterious karmic force. The entire 9 mysterious blood spring was filled with violent 9 mysterious karmic force. The 9 mysterious karmic force was formed from the resentment of billions of souls, blood chi, and the 9 mysterious forbidden force. The corpses Nietion had seen when he had first entered the 9 profound forbidden land were the corpses the sect master of the 9 profound sect master had used to accumulate the resentment of the dead souls. The 9 profound blood spring was formed from the blood of these people. The resentment of souls and blood chi combined with the 9 mysterious forbidden force could form the 9 mysterious karmic force. 10,000 souls could form one nine mysterious karmic force. What the nine profound sect leader had sacrificed was 30 million souls, and what he had condensed was 3,309 mysterious karmic force. Such cruel methods could be said to be universally shocking. The nine profound sect leader had cultivated here to absorb 3,309 mysterious karmic force. At this moment, the nine mysterious blood spring was already filled with 3,309 mysterious karmic force. The nine profound sect leader had never expected that Nietian would be fine after entering the blood spring. Why? Why is he able to withstand the nine mysterious karmic force? The nine profound sect leader screamed in his heart. However, Nietian's figure had already arrived. At this moment, the nine profound sect leader felt the aura of death. The killing intent from Nietian's body made him feel like he was about to suffocate. At this moment, he suddenly regretted lying. Mo Rushi wasn't dead. Die! At this moment, Nietian's figure arrived. He was like a ferocious beast as he threw a punch at the nine profound sect leader. His eyes were pitch black, and his entire body was surging with a terrifying aura of darkness. This was the aura of a devil. The nine profound sect leader was in the middle of cultivating. The nine mysterious karmic force was surging around his body, preventing him from moving. However, the nine mysterious karmic force had also formed an extremely sturdy shield around his body. Bang! At this time, Nietian's fist landed heavily on the karmic force shield, causing a muffled sound to ring out. However, the karmic force shield was exceptionally sturdy and did not shatter. Ha! The nine profound sect leader's eyes trembled as he suddenly reacted. He laughed maniacally and said, "Stinking brat. There's no way you can break my karmic force shield." Bang! Nietian did not respond to him. Instead, he threw another punch at the karmic force shield. The shield remained intact. However, Nietian did not stop. Instead, he punched the karmic force shield again and again. Bang! 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 A series of muffled sounds rang out. Nietian's fist was already a bloody mess, but he did not seem to care. His eyes were as black as the night, as though he had entered trance. "Nietian, you lunatic! It's impossible to break my karmic force shield." The nine profound sect leader's face began to show signs of nervousness. His eyes were trembling in fear. Kaboom! However, Nietian did not care at all. His fist landed on the karmic force shield, and a crack appeared on it. The nine profound sect leader's eyes were trembling. He could not believe his eyes. Nietian had used his fist to break the karmic force shield. Chapter 34:21. Chapter 34:16. Chapter 34:16 Fiend God Inversion. How is this possible? The moment the nine profound karmic shield shattered, the nine profound sect leader's eyes narrowed. His heart was filled with despair and regret. Now that his karmic shield was broken, he was dead for sure. How could he have imagined that a simple lie would cause Nietian to become so violent? Die! At that moment, Nietian let out a bellow. His eyes, which were as dark as the night sky, unleashed an extremely evil killing intent, and a terrifying demon chi surged around him. At the same time, numerous dark magical symbols appeared on his arms, which looked very creepy. When the Ghost Emperor sensed the dark runes on Nietian's arm, he exclaimed in shock, "Demon God Inverse Runes." He never expected that under Nietian's extreme rage, the God Fiend reverse mark would appear on his God Fiend body. Nietian was currently in his God Fiend body state. The moment he heard the news of Mo Rushi's death, the God Fiend power in his body went berserk, and he activated his God Fiend body without the stimulation of his ocular power. However, the Ghost Emperor had never expected that Nietian's God Fiend body would have a God Fiend inverse mark. The Celestial Demon inverse mark was formed by the power of the Celestial Demon, but it was several times stronger than the power of the Celestial Demon. Furthermore, the appearance of every God Fiend inverse mark would greatly strengthen the God Fiend body. Nietian only had the strength of an 8th stage pseudo-sage. The 9,000 god-fiend powers in his body had not been fully awakened. How could there be god-fiend inverse marks on his god-fiend body? Most importantly, could Nietion's current martial body withstand the divine demon inverse inscription? Bang! And at this time, Nietion punched out. His heavy fist directly smashed into the Nine Mystery Sect leader's shoulder. His shoulder actually caved in. The power of the punch penetrated through his back. Pooh! The Nine Mystery Sect leader's body trembled as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Before he could retreat, Nietion reached out and grabbed him. At this time, he could clearly feel the terrifying devil chi surging around Nietion, making him feel helpless, as if he had fallen into an ice house. In Nietion's hands, his entire body strength was completely suppressed, unable to be released at all. Die. At this moment, Nietion spat out another word. He grabbed the neck of the Jiushuan sect leader and clenched his other hand into a fist. The aura of the devil and fiend god inscriptions gushed forth from his fist as he smashed it towards the Jiushuan sect leader. She's not dead. She's not dead. Mo Rushi isn't dead. The Nine Mystery Sect leader's face was filled with despair. At that moment, he no longer had any of the dignity of a sect leader. He was like an ant that was being stepped on. All he wanted was to survive. Who? Nietion's eyes widened, and his body froze. His fist stopped right in front of the Nine Mystery Sect leader's face, and a strong gust of wind caused the Nine Mystery Sect leader's face to contort. No, she's not dead. Mo Rushi is still alive. The Nine Mystery Sect leader saw that Nietion had suddenly stopped. His eyes were trembling, his teeth were chattering, and his voice was trembling. At that moment, he was afraid. He was really afraid. Nietion was like a ferocious beast, and the Nine Mystery Sect leader was just a little lamb. In front of Nietion, the Nine Mystery Sect leader could only be tortured to death. Speak. Nietion's jet-black eyes trembled slightly as he spat out a single word. It was as cold as an iceberg. Mo Rushi has been taken away by the Jueying Temple. The Nine Mystic Sect Master swallowed hard and forced himself to calm down. However, the demon chi around Nietion was so oppressive that he almost suffocated him. Even as he spoke, he had a gasp for breath. The Jueying Temple. Upon hearing these words, Nietion's eyes flickered as wisps of demon chi spread out from the blood spring, giving it a very strange appearance. So all of this had been the Jueying Temple's doing. Nietion, the Jueying Temple ordered me to capture Mo Rushi. I was just a pawn. I had no choice. Please spare me. The Nine Mystery Sect leader looked at Nietion, his eyes flashing. He was on the verge of kneeling down and begging for mercy. Nietion did not speak. His face was so dark that it looked like it was about to bleed. His jet-black eyes trembled as he reached out and grabbed the Nine Mystery Sect leader's head like a pair of iron pincers. Nietion, The Nine Mystery Sect leader could feel the terrifying devil chi and the cold, killing intent. His eyes trembled, and he cried out in shock. He immediately understood that this was the moment of his death. Crack! 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 At that very moment, Nietion's hand suddenly tightened, and the Nine Mystery Sect Master's head was crushed. The Nine Mystery Sect leader's expression froze. His mouth opened wide as if he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. Bam! In the next instant, there was a muffled sound. The Nine Mystery Sect leader's head exploded. His bones and flesh ruptured, and his brain splattered everywhere. Before he died, his face was filled with the most extreme despair. The Nine Mystery Sect leader, a top powerhouse in the myriad domains, was dead. He had never dreamed that he would die at the hands of an 8th-level pseudo-sage martialist. Furthermore, he had died in such a cruel and merciless manner. By now, the Nine Mystery Sect leader, the 9 Great Protectors, the 5 Supremes, and countless pseudo-sage martialists had all died at the hands of Nietion. The Nine Mystery Sect, which had been hidden for so long in the myriad domains, had been destroyed. Nietion had done what he said he would. He had single-handedly destroyed the entire Nine Mystery Sect. If the Nine Mystery Sect leader had known about Nietion's strength earlier, he might not have tried to capture Emorushi back then. At that moment, the 9 mystery sect leaders' bodies stiffened and slowly sank to the ground. At the same time, Nyetian had also returned to normal. The celestial demon inscription on his arm had disappeared, his pitch-black eyes had returned to normal, and the extreme demon destruction seal at the corner of his eyes had also disappeared. However, at that moment, his face was incomparably pale, and his body was trembling slightly. His entire body was extremely fatigued, and he felt as though all the bones in his body were about to fall apart. He was too weak at that moment. Before entering the 9 mysterious blood spring, he had already expended a large amount of energy fighting against the 5 supremes and the 9 great protectors. Just now, he had activated the celestial demon body in a fit of rage. Coupled with the unexpected appearance of the celestial demon inscription, his martial body was under immense pressure. It was already a miracle that he was still alive at this moment. However, at that moment, Nyetian suddenly felt a familiar aura. His eyes narrowed, and a look of joy appeared in his eyes. He had actually sensed a completely unexpected aura from the 9 mystery sect leaders' corpse. The aura of an astral soul. Astral soul! Nyetian exclaimed in shock. With a thought, he activated the original astral soul opus. Astral soul. In the next instant, the 9 mystery sect leaders' corpse, which was still sinking, emitted a ball of astral runes and was instantly absorbed by the original astral soul opus. 7 slaughter, astral soul. At that moment, Nyetian's divine sense locked onto the original astral soul opus. His eyes trembled with excitement as he couldn't help but exclaim in joy. Chapter 34:22. 9 mysterious karma, 7 slaughter, astral soul. Nyetian was momentarily stunned and couldn't react for a long time. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that the 9 mystical sect leaders' astral soul would be the 7 slaughters' astral soul. Among the taboo astral souls, the slaughter wolf astral soul was one of the 2 absolute astral souls. Not only that, it was also one of the most unique taboo astral souls. It could be split into 3, namely the 7 slaughters astral soul, the army destroyer astral soul, and the voracious wolf astral soul. Previously, Nyetian had already met the Shadow Moon greedy wolf of the Jueying Divine Palace. However, at that time, he didn't know that this person possessed the greedy wolf astral soul. After which, he met the Shadow Flame Army Destroyer and successfully obtained the Army Destroyer astral soul, allowing Tang 13 to fuse with it. However, the Army Destroyer astral soul wasn't complete. It required the 7 murders astral souls and the voracious wolf astral soul to fuse into one. Only then would the Army Destroyer astral soul be formed. According to the 2nd astral emissary, the Rakshasa Hall Elder, the Annihilation Wolf astral soul, in its complete state, was even more terrifying than the Azure Dragon astral soul. At this moment, Nyetian had actually obtained the 7 slaughters astral soul from the 9 mystical sect leader. How could he not be shocked? Could this person be the 7 killing stars of Jueying Temple? Nyetian's eyes darkened as he guessed. I don't think so. At this moment, the voice of the Ghost Emperor rang out. This fellow didn't fuse with the 7 slaughter astral soul. He's merely borrowing the power of the 7 slaughter astral soul to resist the 9 mystic karma. Nyetian was stunned and waited for the Ghost Emperor to continue. I'm guessing that the sect master must have made a deal with the Jueying Temple. He wants to fuse with the 9 Xian karma power, but his martial body cannot withstand it. He needs another power to help him fuse with it. The Ghost Emperor frowned and said, the Jueying Divine Palace provided him with the 7 kills star soul, and the condition was for him to capture Emorushi. Is that so? Nyetian's eyes narrowed and his face darkened. It seemed like what the 9 mystical sect leader had said was true. He was merely a chess piece. The Ghost Emperor's guess was more or less correct. The 9 profound sect leader had indeed obtained the 7 murder star soul from the Jueying Divine Palace, and he had used it to resist the pressure of the 9 profound karma. The energy he wanted to fuse with wasn't the 7 slaughters astral soul, but the 9 mysterious karmic force. Rushi is at the Absolute Shadow Palace. I'll go there now. At that moment, Nyetion's eyes suddenly trembled. He moved, preparing to head to the Absolute Shadow Palace immediately. Rushi was in more danger in the hands of the Jueying Shrine than she had been in the Nine Mysteries sect. However, as soon as Nyetion moved, his body trembled and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was too weak at the moment and urgently needed rest. Nyetion, you just activated your Godfiend body. Now, your martial body is extremely weak. In your current state, even if you go to the Jueying Palace, you will only be sending yourself to your death. The Ghost Emperor frowned and said, what you need most now is rest. Rest? Nyetion frowned. His expression was extremely ugly. Now, that Rushi was in the hands of the Jueying Shrine. How could he possibly rest? I can recover my strength on the way. Nyetion forced himself to take a step forward. However, he felt as if his legs were filled with lead sand, and he couldn't move at all. Moreover, even the slightest movement of his body caused him to feel as if his entire body was about to be torn apart. Damn it, Nyetion growled. He forced himself to take a step forward, but his entire body felt as if it was about to fall apart. The Godfiend inverse pattern is indeed terrifying. It's putting too much pressure on Nyetion's martial body. The Ghost Emperor was shocked, but he didn't tell Nyetion about the Godfiend inverse pattern. Instead, he said, Nyetion, you have no choice but to rest now. Nyetion's face was gloomy, and his entire person seemed sinister and terrifying. Nyetion, there's a huge force in front of you right now. The Ghost Emperor suddenly laughed and said, if you want to recover your martial body as soon as possible, then absorb the 9 mysterious karma in the blood spring. Nyetion's eyebrows furrowed as he went blank. 9 profound karma. Yes. The Ghost Emperor nodded and said, the sect leader spent so much effort to absorb the 9 mysterious karma, but his martial body is too weak to absorb it directly. You, on the other hand, are different. You have the power of the Godfiend, and your martial body is strong enough. Your martial body is weak now, so you're no longer afraid of the 9 mysterious karma. With your martial body, you can easily absorb the 3,009 mysterious karma in the blood spring. Upon hearing the Ghost Emperor's words, Nyetion's eyes flickered with a bright light. Nyetion, as long as you can absorb 3,900 karma points, you'll definitely be able to break through into the 9th grade. At that time, you'll have a better chance of saving Rushi from the Absolute Shadow Divine Palace. With these words, the Ghost Emperor's eyes shone with burning desire. 3,009 mysterious karma was condensed from the blood chi of 30 million souls and the 9 mysterious forbidden force. Its power was unimaginable. Otherwise, the 9 mysterious sect leader wouldn't have tried so hard to absorb 3,009 mysterious karma. Nyetion's Godfiend body was enough to withstand the impact of 3,009 mysterious karma. As long as he could successfully absorb 3,009 mysterious karma, Nyetion's strength would at least reach the rank 9 pseudo-sacred realm. He might even be able to break through the realm's restrictions and become a sacred realm. Ghost Emperor, how long do you think it will take for me to absorb 3,009 mysterious karma? Nyetion became cold and asked. This? The Ghost Emperor's expression froze. He hesitated for a moment before saying, I'm not sure. What do you mean by not sure? Nyetion frowned, his face grim. If it took a few years to absorb 3,009 mysterious karma, he wouldn't do it even if he was asked to become a sacred realm. Rushi was in danger, and the child in her womb could be born at any time. How could Nyetion waste so much time here? It will take at least a few months. The Ghost Emperor hesitated for a long time before telling the truth. If Nyetion was in his normal state, it would be faster, but his martial physique was extremely weak. It would take at least a few months to completely absorb 3,009 mysterious karma. A few months. Nyetion's eyes darkened and his expression stiffened. After a long silence, he said, 3 days. I only need 3 days to absorb 3,009 mysterious karma. 3 days? The Ghost Emperor was shocked and said subconsciously, "That's impossible. That was 3,009 mysterious karma condensed from 30 million souls." Even if Nietion's martial physique was powerful, it was impossible for him to absorb 3,009 mysterious karma in just 3 days. "Lulu, are you done refining the power of the heavenly punishment?" Nietion suddenly asked the Holy Spirit's blood imprint. Lulu responded in Nietion a moment later. "All right." The corner of Nietion's mouth twitched. "I need the heavenly punishment now." This. The Ghost Emperor was stunned when he heard Nietion's words. Chapter 34:23. Rank 9 Pseudo, Saint Nietion's plan was to first refine his body with the power of the heavenly punishment to help his martial body recover. Then, he would borrow the power of the heavenly punishment to forcefully absorb 3,900 Xian karma. At that moment, the Ghost Emperor came to his senses. His eyes flickered as he exclaimed, "Nietion, do you know how dangerous this is?" Nietion's martial body had reached its limit. What he needed the most was to slowly recover. However, Nietion wanted to use the power of the heavenly punishment to break through to the martial body. This idea was too crazy. Nietion had obtained the power of the heavenly punishment from a few heavenly executioners. He had absorbed some of the power back then, but most of it was stored in the sacred soul blood seal. At this time, he wanted to absorb all the power of the heavenly punishment and forcefully use it to refine his body and recover his injured martial body. However, doing so was extremely risky. The pressure on his martial body was too great, and it might even cause his martial body to self-destruct. "Ghost Emperor, do you think I have a choice?" Nietion said calmly. If he used the Ghost Emperor's method to slowly absorb the Xian karma, it would take at least several months. Nietion could wait for several months, but could Imo-Rushi? Could the child in her womb? At this moment, Nietion had no other choice. He could only take the risk. "Nietion, your martial body can't withstand the power of the heavenly punishment. If you really want to take the risk, you must do it in the state of the God-Fiend body." The Ghost Emperor was silent for a long time before he said solemnly, "But if you activate the God-Fiend body now, your mind might collapse." If the God-Fiend body was activated, the power of the God-Fiend would affect Nietion's mind, and it was very likely that it would collapse. What if there's an eternal night demon fox? Nietion's eyes trembled as they released a blazing light. Eternal night demon fox. The Ghost Emperor was stunned. Only then did he remember that there was still an eternal night demon fox. His eyes immediately heated up as he nodded heavily. "Yes, as long as you can connect with the eternal night demon fox's mind and let it bear the impact of the God-Fiend body for you, your mind will not collapse." "All right." The corners of Nietion's mouth twitched. He sat down cross-legged and focused all his attention, trying to connect with the Evernight demon fox's divine sense. The Evernight demon fox was still young and immature, but Nietion had already experienced it before, so it was not difficult for him to connect to the Evernight demon fox's spiritual space at this time. About half an hour later, a gratified smile appeared on Nietion's face. He had successfully established a connection with the eternal night demonic fox's divine sense space. He had also used the little demonic fox's immense psychic power to create a psychic shield to protect his divine sense. "Ghost Emperor, if I do this, will the little demon fox be able to take it?" Nietion took a deep breath and asked the Ghost Emperor. "Don't worry. With the eternal night demon fox's mental strength, this little impact is nothing to it." The Ghost Emperor smiled faintly. He was very confident in the eternal night demon fox. The eternal night demon fox's mind power was so strong that the mind power of the gods and demons posed no threat to it at all. "All right." Nietion nodded slightly and let out a long breath. Then, with a thought, his eyes flashed at the same time. Following that, a terrifying power was released. It did not flow out of his eyes, but instead went against the direction of his martial body. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Nietion's martial body's Yuan Meridian was attacked by the powerful power. Suddenly, a terrifying force appeared in his martial body, like a raging wave, causing his martial body to rush to the limit. In the next moment, the godly demon body was activated. At this time, the godly demon inverse mark appeared on Nietian's arm again. Boom! At the same time, a powerful mind power attack rushed towards Nietian's divine sense like a landslide and a tsunami. However, it was perfectly blocked by the mind power shield. Lulu. At this time, Nietian's eyes darkened and he growled. Lulu answered and immediately released the Heaven Punisher power. The Saint Spirit Blood Seal on Nietian's forehead released a strange white halo. Boom, boom, boom. Within Nietian's martial body, the violent Heaven Punisher power rushed out and instantly filled his body. At this moment, his flesh, bones, and meridians were all filled with the Heaven Punisher power. The violent chi of the Heaven Punisher power made Nietian feel as if every inch of his body was about to explode. Under this intense pain, he could not help but scream. Nietian, hold on. Liolio's voice was heard, revealing unconcealable nervousness. Even though Nietian was in the state of the godly demon body, he might not be able to withstand the terrifying impact of the Heaven Punisher power. Bang! 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 In the next moment, countless bloody wounds appeared on Nietian's body and blood gushed out, turning his entire body into a bloody man. Nietian. Lulu saw this and screamed in fear. I'm fine, Nietian bellowed, as if he were a wild beast. At this moment, he must hold on. Lulu, don't stop. Continue to release the Heaven Punisher power. At the same time, the Ghost Emperor's voice sounded, shouting nervously. At this time, they had no way out. They must choose to believe in Nietian. Lulu agreed and released the Heaven Punisher power again. Immediately, the bloody wounds on Nietian's body became even more frightening. His entire body felt as if it was being torn by thousands of sharp blades, as if his body would be cut into pieces in the next moment. However, Nietian's divine sense remained awake. Even though he was in great pain, he could feel his martial physique growing stronger bit by bit. Following this, he endured the pain for around half an hour before the bloody wounds on his body began to heal slowly. Nietian, get ready to absorb the 9 mysterious karma power. When his martial physique was almost fully healed, the Ghost Emperor's voice said in a deep tone, Nietian responded and spread his divine sense to sense the streams of 9 mysterious karma power in the space of the blood spring, before his martial physique began to absorb them slowly. Bang! After a short while, the first karmic power entered his body, and Nietian suddenly felt a violent force impact him, causing his body to tremble uncontrollably. At that moment, his mind was filled with miserable wails, as if thousands of ghosts were wailing. It was the resentment, a stream of 9 mysterious karma power condensed from the resentment of 10,000 dead souls. One could easily imagine how vicious it was. Luckily, Nietian's celestial demon nascent embryo body had a strong resistance against the resentment of the dead souls. Following this, streams of 9 mysterious karma power began to enter Nietian's body like runes, merging with his yuan meridians. 2 days later, Nietian's eyes sprang open, emitting a sharp aura. Bang! He rose to his feet and unleashed a terrifying aura, causing the entire 9 mysterious blood spring to tremble. A breakthrough! The Ghost Emperor's eyes flickered as he yelled in surprise. Chapter 34-24. Tang 13. 9th Stage Pseudo-Saint. The corners of Nietian's mouth twitched as he smiled faintly. With the power of heaven's punishment tempering his body and the 3,900 Xian karma, he finally broke through to the 9th stage pseudo-sage realm. More importantly, his martial body had been completely restored. He didn't break through to the saint realm. The Ghost Emperor was puzzled. He hadn't expected that Nietian would not break through to the saint realm, even though he had been tempered by the power of heaven punishment and had absorbed 3,900 mysterious karma. Even such a terrifying power hadn't helped Nietian break through to the saint realm. Nie Tian's martial body was far more powerful than the Ghost Emperor had expected. Jueying Temple, here I come. At that moment, the corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, and the piercing look in his eyes turned as cold as winter. Then, Nie Tian immediately left the Nine Xian Forbidden Zone. Father, Bailey Shengxue, I'm going to the Jueying territory now. You two don't have to come with me. Go back to Heaven Punishment City first, Nie Tian said to Nie Fenghua and Bailey Shengxue outside the Forbidden Zone. Nie Tian, are you looking for the Jueying Temple? Nie Fenghua had already learned about Mo Rushi from Nie Tian. He frowned and asked in a low voice. Yes. Nie Tian nodded slightly. His eyes were full of confidence. He smiled faintly and said, Father, don't worry. I will save Mo Rushi. Nie Fenghua nodded and didn't insist. He knew that even if he followed Nie Tian, he wouldn't be of much help. Instead, he might become a burden to Nie Tian. Nie Fenghua and Bailey Shengxue didn't stay. They said goodbye to Nie Tian and left. Ghost Desolation, let's go. Nie Tian looked at Ghost Desolation and smiled faintly. The two didn't delay and immediately headed for the Jueying territory. The Jueying territory was a large territory on the edge of the Sacred Soul region. It was where the headquarters of the Jueying Divine Palace was. 3 days later, in the center of the Jueying territory, Jueying City, two figures appeared in the sky. They were Nie Tian and Desolate Ghost Boundless. Nie Tian, what should we do? Desolate Ghost looked at Absolute Shadow City below and asked solemnly. That should be where the Jueying Shrine is, Nie Tian said coldly as he locked his eyes on a grand palace in the center of the city. That should be where the Jueying Shrine is. Are we going to kill our way into Jueying Temple? Desolate Ghost frowned as he looked at Nie Tian. I'm afraid it's not that simple. The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, and his expression was very ugly. He had long sensed that the entire Jueying city was enveloped in a grand array. Furthermore, the aura of this formation was no weaker than the Heaven Punishment Formation. Since Jueying Temple was located in Jueying City, it was normal for it to be protected by a great array. But Nie Tian hadn't expected that the great city-protecting array of Jueying City would be so powerful. At this time, even with his strength, he couldn't break the great array. Ghost Emperor. After thinking for a moment, Nie Tian frowned and called out to the Ghost Emperor. Nie Tian, this great city-protecting array is not simple. The Ghost Emperor naturally understood what Nie Tian meant. He said in a low voice, even if I wanted to find the eye of the array, it would take me at least several months. And even if I did find the eye of the array, with your strength, you might not be able to break the great array. When Nie Tian heard the Ghost Emperor's words, his expression darkened and became even uglier. For any great array, the eye of the array was the weakest place. However, even if the eye of a great array was weak, not all warriors could break it. The great city-protecting array in front of him was too powerful. Even if the Ghost Emperor found the eye of the array, Nie Tian still wouldn't be able to break it. It seems that I have underestimated Jueying Temple strength. Nie Tian frowned and said in a low voice. But now that he was here, he had to enter the city no matter what. Then, Nie Tian carefully observed Jueying City and found that the entire city was like a castle. There was no entrance. Nie Tian, it seems that only people from Jueying Temple can enter this city. At this time, the Ghost Emperor spoke again. If you want to enter the city, someone must be in the city to open the Great Array entrance. Nie Tian's expression was gloomy. He had just arrived in Jueying City and didn't know anyone. How could anyone in the city help him open the array? Nie Tian, let me see how strong this great city-protecting array is. At this time, Desolate Ghost suddenly narrowed his eyes and sneered. Then his figure moved. The renegade god Rakshasa appeared in his hand, and his entire body released a powerful spear intent. It was extremely terrifying. Desolate Ghost! Nie Tian was stunned for a moment before he reacted and shouted. But it was too late. Boom! Desolate Ghost directly attacked. He thrust his spear forward, and the spear's shadow rushed out like a mountain towards the great city-protecting array. Boom! In the next moment, the spear's shadow fell and bombarded the barrier of the array. There was a muffled sound in the air, and the spear's shadow seemed to be swallowed by the array and disappeared. Desolate Ghost was shocked by the scene in front of him and couldn't help but cry out in surprise. "Be careful!" At this time, Nietion's voice suddenly sounded. Then his figure moved in an instant, and he slashed out with his sword. The sword's shadow whistled out. Boom! Almost at the same time, within the great array, a spear's shadow bounced out. It was even more terrifying than Desolate Ghost's attack, and it rolled towards Desolate Ghost. "This!" Desolate Ghost frowned and cried out in horror. Boom! In the next moment, the spear's shadow rushed over, but was blocked by the sword's shadow high in the sky. The two terrible forces collapsed at the same time. Desolate Ghost's figure was pushed back a few thousand meters by the violent waves. After he stabilized his body, he wasn't injured. What a terrifying formation! The Desolate Ghost boundless boundary was dumbfounded. He looked at the formation with a trace of fear. "Desolate Ghost, are you all right?" At this time, Nietion's figure appeared, and he asked in a deep voice. "I'm fine." Desolate Ghost shook his head slightly. He still had some lingering fear. The attack that was reflected by the array was very terrifying. If it wasn't for Nietion's timely action, he would definitely be seriously injured. "This array is really troublesome." Nietion frowned, and his face was gloomy. It was impossible to break the array by force. It wouldn't be easy for them to enter the city. They waited for a long time, but no one appeared in the city. Desolate Ghost's attack didn't attract anyone. "What should we do now, Nietion?" Boundless Ghost frowned, a troubled expression on his face. Nietion frowned, and his face was tense. He didn't know what to do either. All of a sudden, the formation below them shook a little, and a gap appeared in it. Nietion's eyes flickered. He didn't expect someone in the city to open a gap in the array. "Nietion, enter the city now." In the next second, Nietion heard a familiar voice, causing his eyes to widen again. He couldn't be more familiar with that voice. It was Tang 13's voice. Nietion didn't expect Tang 13 to appear when he needed her the most. "Desolate Ghost, let's enter the city." Nietion's lips twitched. With a slight movement, he flew toward the gap in the array like a ray of light. Boundless Ghost Desolate reacted and immediately followed. Chapter 34:25. Tang 13. Nietion passed through the great array and entered Juing City. He immediately saw a familiar figure. It was Tang 13. "Get out of here." When Tang 13 saw Nietion and Desolate Ghost, she was a little flustered. She waved her hand and dashed forward. Nietion went blank for a moment, and in the next moment, he sensed that dozens of powerful auras were rushing towards him. It was obvious that these people were chasing after Tang 13. "Desolate Ghost!" Nietion called out to Desolate Ghost before catching up to Tang 13. He was very fast. At the same time, his consciousness locked onto the dozens of auras rushing towards him. He could not help but frown in surprise. The dozens of auras were all very strong. They were all at the peak of the false sacred realm. Nietion was very surprised. How could there be so many strong cultivators from Juing Palace? Although he had not had much contact with Juing Palace before, he guessed that Juing Palace's strength was below that of the Nine Mysteries sect. What puzzled him even more was what Tang 13 had done to attract so many strong cultivators to chase after her. "You brat, do you think you can escape?" At that moment, a low voice suddenly sounded in the void. Then a huge palm appeared, pressing down on Tang 13. Damn it! Tang 13 felt a huge pressure fall on him. It sealed the space around him, making him feel as if his martial body was about to be torn apart. He could not help but scream. Nietion frowned, and his expression flickered. The palm in the void was extremely powerful. It was no weaker than the 9 protectors of the Nine Mysteries sect. He had not expected Juing Palace to have such strong cultivators. Before, he had seen Ing Qinyu, the lord of Juing Palace. Even Ing Qinyu did not seem to be so powerful. Boom! At the same time, another palm fell from the other side. It was like a huge waterfall falling from the sky. The terrible power surged in the void, causing the void to rumble. This palm was even more powerful than before. It was still coming for Tang 13. He did not know what Tang 13 had done to attract so many strong cultivators. Ghost desolate. In the blink of an eye, Nietian roared in a low voice as he directly acted. The devil sword of 7 demise slashed through the air as a sword shadow whistled through the air. Instantly, the air was filled with demonic chi, as though there was an undercurrent of darkness. Bang! The sword shadow was like a sudden clap of thunder. The moment it fell, it directly smashed a palm shadow. Bang! At the same time, Wasteland Ghost Boundless Ghost also made his move. The repulsive god Rakshasa rushed out in the air, and the violent spear shadow blocked the other palm. When did the two of you become so strong? Seeing this, Tang 13's eyes flickered. She stared at Nietian and Desolate Ghost in astonishment and let out a strange cry. Nietian and Boundless Desolate Ghost weren't this strong when they were in the Saint Devil Mystic Land. After such a short period of time, Tang 13 didn't think that the two of them would become so terrifying. Let's leave this place first. Nietian didn't explain too much and said solemnly. All right, Tang 13 agreed. She immediately sped up and flew forward. Brat, you killed the greedy wolf star of the Juying Shrine, and you want to leave just like that? However, at that moment, there was a low roar that sounded like thunder in the air. Then, a terrible white thunderbolt appeared in the air. It was like a giant white snake, tens of thousands of meters long. With a loud bang, it struck down angrily towards Tang 13. When Nietian heard the voice in the air, he couldn't help but frown. His expression changed. So Tang 13 had killed the Shadow Moon Greedy Wolf of the Juying Shrine. Of course, he knew that the Greedy Wolf Star of the Juying Shrine was the Shadow Moon Greedy Wolf. And yet Tian had seen the Shadow Moon Greedy Wolf long ago in the Abandoned Land. It was just that at that time, he didn't know about the Forbidden Star Soul. When Ye Tian had parted ways with Tang 13 and Tang Yuyu in the Decimo Domain, the two of them had gone to the Juying Domain. At that time, Ye Tian had guessed that Tang 13 had come for the other 2 Star Souls of the Killer Wolf Star Soul. He hadn't thought that Tang 13 would actually kill the Shadow Moon Greedy Wolf Star Soul. The Shadow Moon Greedy Wolf wasn't very strong, but he had a special status in the Juying Shrine. It wouldn't have been easy for Tang 13 to kill him. It was no wonder that the Juying Shrine had sent so many strong cultivators to kill Tang 13. Why have so many super strong cultivators appeared in the Juying Shrine recently? Tang 13 looked up at the white thunderbolt falling from above. His eyes couldn't help but tremble as he cried out in shock. There hadn't been many strong cultivators in the Juying Shrine before, but recently there seemed to be more and more of them, and all of them were super strong cultivators. At this time, Tang 13 wanted to avoid the white thunderbolt, but the power of the thunderbolt was so terrible that it locked down the surrounding space for tens of thousands of meters. There was no way for him to escape. Brat, you're dead. In the sky, a white-robed figure appeared. His low, powerful voice was filled with killing intent. Ghost Huang, you block this person, leave the others to me. At this time, Nye Tian roared. Sword will surged wildly from his body, forming waves of sword will in the air. They were incomparably violent, like a tsunami in the sky. The white-robed figure in the sky finally noticed Nye Tian. Feeling the latter's sword power, he couldn't help but frown and cry out in surprise. Before, all his attention had been on Tang 13, and he hadn't paid much attention to Nye Tian. At this moment, he felt Nye Tian's sword power and was shocked. He hadn't expected a young cultivator to have such power. Roar! At this time, a dragon's roar suddenly sounded in the sky. Then a green dragon shot up into the sky. Its huge body was like a mountain, and it forcibly blocked the huge white thunderbolt. How is this possible? The white-robed figure was originally staring at Nye Tian, but was startled by the sudden scene before him and immediately cried out in alarm. Buzz! At this moment, Nye Tian made his move. The demonic sword of 7 absolutes emitted a low and deep cry. Then, a shadow of a sword shot up into the sky. A huge amount of demonic chi spread out in all directions, as if it wanted to devour the heavens and earth. The white-robed figure's eyes widened again. Next, a shrill cry of agony rang out in his ears, causing his heart to tremble. At the same time, tens of black-robed figures appeared in the sky. They were also affected by the cry of agony, causing their hearts to tremble. Go! The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. Cold, a pair of astral wings appeared on his back, and he transformed into a streak of light as he sped away. This sword of his was infused with the power of the 9 mysterious karma. Using his sword will to stimulate the karma, it exploded with a mental attack that affected the hearts of the white-robed figure and the others. The white-robed figure's expression darkened as he regained his senses. However, at this moment, Nie Tian and the others had already disappeared. Damn it! Seeing that Nie Tian and the others had disappeared, the white-robed figure roared in anger. Lord Envoy, what should we do? At this moment, the other cultivators arrived. One of them took a step forward and asked the white-robed figure cautiously. Chapter 34:26. Saint Realm, the white-robed martial artist, was furious. He wanted to capture Nie Tian and the others immediately and cut them into pieces. Yes, the person next to him answered and disappeared with the other martial artists. That spear-wielding martial artist just released an azure dragon star soul. The white-robed martial artist looked at the void with a murderous expression. After thinking for a long time, he said in a cold voice, "Let's inform Lord Astrologer first." Then, his figure moved and disappeared into the void. Boom! Not long after his figure disappeared, the void suddenly trembled and 3 figures appeared. It was Nie Tian and the others. Just now, when the white-robed martial artist and the others were distracted, Nie Tian and the others did not leave. Nie Tian had used the boundary of the universe to tear open a space-time crack and temporarily hid himself. Who is this person? How can he be so strong? At this time, Nie Tian looked at the place where the white-robed martial artist and the others had disappeared. He frowned and his face was gloomy. The white-robed martial artist's strength was very terrifying, far exceeding that of an ordinary pseudo-sage peak martial artist. Moreover, Nie Tian could clearly feel a mysterious aura circulating around the white-robed martial artist's body. This was something he had never sensed from a myriad domain martial artist. What surprised him even more was that the white-robed martial artist was very young. He looked less than 1,000 years old. With such strength at such a young age, if the white-robed martial artist was from the myriad domain, he would be a peerless monster. Nie Tian, that white-robed kid is a Saint Realm martial artist, the Ghost Emperor said in a deep voice. Saint Realm martial artist. Upon hearing the Ghost Emperor's words, Nie Tian's pupils involuntarily shrank, and he let out a cry of surprise. Ing Qinyu, the temple master of Juying Temple, was just a rank 9 pseudo-sage martial artist. Why would a young Saint Realm martial artist appear at this time? Also, the others called the white-robed martial artist Lord Astrologer. What did this Lord Astrologer represent? And what did this Lord Astrologer in the white-robed martial artist's mouth represent? In an instant, there were countless questions in Nie Tian's mind. It was as if a huge rock was pressing down on his chest, and he suddenly felt like he couldn't breathe. He had found it strange that so many strong cultivators had suddenly appeared in Juying Temple. From the looks of it, these experts should be from the sacred world. Could there be another powerful force hiding behind the Juying Shrine? In the next moment, Nie Tian's eyes trembled. He thought of a possibility, and his eyes trembled. Nie Tian, I don't think the End Shadow Divine Hall is simple. It's extremely likely that they're a pawn of a powerful organization from the Saint's world, the Ghost Emperor said sternly at this moment. Nie Tian nodded. He had already thought of this. The Juying Divine Palace's plans were all enormous, including the 9 great essences, the Dragon Spring Vein, and the Star Origin Stone. These items were all cornerstone, holy items of the Saint's world. The puny Juying Divine Hall would not be able to take them all. Therefore, it was not surprising that there was a powerful force behind the End Shadow Divine Hall. Nyetian, it looks like it won't be easy for you to save Rushi, the Ghost Emperor said sternly. His expression was a little ugly, as if he was worried about something. However, Nyetian remained calm at this moment, and asked in a deep voice, Ghost Emperor, how strong is that white-robed man? Although the Ghost Emperor had said that the man in white had the strength of a saint, Nyetian had only felt a great power from him. But this power was not enough to make him fear it. Nyetian even felt that the man in white was not as strong as the swordsman on the Sky Sword ranking. That man in white should only be a first heavenly charm saint, and judging from his aura, he should have only reached that level recently, the Ghost Emperor said with a frown. A first heavenly charm saint. Nyetian's eyes narrowed slightly when he heard the Ghost Emperor's words. He was a little confused. The Saint Martial path is similar to the Sword path. It is divided into 6 realms, and each realm has 9 levels. The Ghost Emperor paused and said, the 6 saint realms are Heavenly Charm Saint Disciple, Heavenly Mandate Saint Master, Heavenly Justice Saint, Heavenly Tribulation Saint King, Heavenly Enlightenment Saint Emperor, and Heavenly Martial Saint Ancestor. Heavenly Charm, Heavenly Mandate, Heavenly Justice, Heavenly Tribulation, Heavenly Enlightenment, and Heavenly Martial. Nyetian's eyes flickered. These 6 realms were indeed similar to Sword Charm, Heavenly Mandate, Heavenly Justice, Sword Heavenly Tribulation, Heavenly Enlightenment, and Heavenly Martial. Moreover, each of the 6 saint realms had a specific name. The Heavenly Charm Saint Disciple, the Heavenly Mandate Saint Master, the Heavenly Justice Saint, the Heavenly Justice Saint, the Heavenly Tribulation Saint King, the Heavenly Enlightenment Saint Emperor, and the Heavenly Martial Saint Ancestor. The 6 saint realms are the same as the 6 sword realms. The first 3 are the Mortal Saint realms, and the last 3 are the Supreme Saint realms. The Ghost Emperor continued, from a Mortal Saint realm to the Supreme Saint realm is a watershed for martial artists. Most of the Saint realm martial artists are mortal saints. Only a small number of talented martial artists can reach the Supreme Saint realm. So that's how it is. Nyetian nodded and asked, Ghost Emperor, how strong is the white-robed swordsman compared to some of the swordsmen in the Sky Sword Martial? The white-robed swordsman is very young. Since he can reach the Heavenly Charm realm, it means that he is a very talented martial artist. The Ghost Emperor said, other than the Sky Guardians and the Sword Slaves and the Sky Sword, most of the swordsmen you saw in the Sky Sword Martial are still in the False Saint realm. However, they're in the Sky Sword Martial, a special world of sword essence, so their sword principles are very strong. Even the Sword Chief in the Sky Sword, Jun Zuei-ji, has just reached the Heavenly Charm realm. Moreover, Jun Zuei-ji may not be as strong as the white-robed swordsman. Upon hearing the Ghost Emperor's words, Nyetian couldn't help but shudder. Of course, he knew that during the Hao Ian sword martial arts, everyone relied on the strength of the sword way, because everyone's martial arts strength was suppressed below the Sage realm. Jun Zuei-ji had already become a Heavenly Charm Saint Disciple, but he had not been able to use his martial Dao. But the white-robed swordsman was not restricted, so his martial Dao was no weaker than Jun Zuei-ji in the Sky Sword Martial. Oh no! Nyetian frowned and his face darkened. If the force behind the Juying Temple sends many Saint Realm powerhouses, how am I going to rescue Rushi? Since the Juying Temple had a powerful force behind them, there must have been powerhouses descending. Although the white-robed swordsman was a Heavenly Charm Saint Disciple, he was not the strongest. At the very least, there was a Star Minister above him, who was stronger than him. If the Juying Temple had many powerhouses at the moment, Nyetian would not have been able to rescue Rushi. Given his strength, it was unknown whether he could fight against the white-robed swordsman. Chapter 34:27. Chapter 34:22. Chapter 34:22 Wolf Slaying. What? Nyetian went blank for a moment, confused. The Holy Realm has a rule that Saint Realm martial practitioners are not allowed to enter the realms. The Ghost Emperor's eyes darkened as he said, when a Sage Realm warrior enters a territory, it's an attack on the territory system itself. Not to mention, a Sage Realm warrior's powerful battle prowess is enough to destroy a territory. You should remember what happened in the Tianqing mountain range. The myriad ghosts and the Holy Feather race are very careful when they come to our realm. What they fear is an organization called the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. This organization can be said to be the strongest organization in the Saints' world. They play the role of justice in the Saints' world. The Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion has a rule that forbids sage-level cultivators from entering the realms. They're actually doing this to ensure the stability of the Saints' world, as the maintenance of the Saints' world actually requires the support of the various dimensional systems. So that's how it is. Nietion's eyes flickered and he felt relieved. However, the Ghost Emperor frowned again and said, "There are many Sage Realm cultivators who sometimes take great risks to enter the realms for some great benefits. As long as they don't pose a threat to the realm system, the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion won't pursue the matter too much." Yes, Nietion nodded. He thought back to when Xiahou Yao, the Lord of Earthly Destruction and the Lord of all Spirits Converging Stream, were fighting in the Heavenly Punishment Mountain range. In order not to destroy the realm, Xiahou Yao had specially activated a protective barrier. It seemed like these sages were afraid of the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. The Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion is the most mysterious and powerful faction in the All-Heavens Sacred World. At this time, the Ghost Emperor's eyes flickered as if he had thought of something. He said, "There was once a Sage Realm martial artist who forcefully broke into a territory and caused it to collapse. In a fit of rage, the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion not only killed that person, but also destroyed his sect. The entire sect was annihilated by the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion overnight. What a domineering Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion!" Nietion exclaimed. But the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion couldn't be blamed. After all, that person had destroyed a territory. The reason why the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion annihilated the sect was probably to threaten the other Sage Realm martial artists who dared to enter the domain without permission. The Ghost Emperor's eyes darkened as he said with a frown, "Nietion, the force behind the Juing Divine Palace won't send two powerful warriors. However, there should be quite a few Heavenly Charm Divine disciples. I'm afraid it won't be easy for you to defeat them. No matter how many experts the Juing Shrine has, since I'm here, I must save Imo Rushi." Nietion's face darkened, his eyes filled with determination. This time, no matter how many Heaven Charm holy disciples the Juing Divine Palace sent, they couldn't stop Nietion. 1-inch 9, 1-1, 1-1-1 on 1-1 on 1-1 on 1-1, 1-1, Pavilion 1-1 on 1-1, 1-1 on 1-1, 1-1, 1-1, 113, 1-1 on 1-1, 113 on Tang, 113 Tang, 1-1, 1, 1-1, 1-2, 9-1. Yu has already returned. Tang 13 laughed and said, "I waited outside Juing City for half a month. I killed someone from Juing Temple and borrowed his Juing token to enter the city." Nietion nodded and asked, "You really killed the Shadow Moon Greedy Wolf?" "Yes." Tang 13 smiled proudly. She extended her palm, and a star-rune whirlpool appeared. "Not only did I kill the Shadow Moon Greedy Wolf, but I also obtained the Greedy Wolf Star Soul. But that guy was very cautious. I followed him for a few days before I finally found a chance to attack. Although I acted quickly and killed him instantly, I was still exposed and attracted a large number of experts. Fortunately, you guys arrived in time. Otherwise, I'm afraid that I would have lost my life here." Nietion frowned and asked, "How did you find the Shadow Moon Greedy Wolf?" Tang 13 laughed again. "The 3 stars of killing, destroying, wolf, 7 kills, destroying army, and Greedy Wolf have a strong connection. Not long after I entered the city, I quickly found the Shadow Moon Greedy Wolf." He frowned and continued, "But strangely, I haven't felt the aura of the 7 Kills Star Soul. Could it be that the 7 Kills Star Soul isn't in the city? I've already fused with the Destroying Army Astral Soul and obtained the Greedy Wolf Astral Soul. If I could obtain the 7 Kills Star Soul, I would be able to complete the Killing Destruction Wolf Astral Soul. Let me show you something." Nietion stared at Tang 13 as his lips twitched. With a thought, the 7-kill star soul appeared in his palm. This is... Tang 13 stared at the 7 kills star soul in Nie Tian's palm and felt a strong resonance with it. His eyes narrowed and his expression turned sluggish for a few seconds before he stuttered, 7 kills star soul. He was very sure that the 7 kills star soul in Nie Tian's hand was the 7 kills star soul. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that the 7 kills star soul he had painstakingly searched for would actually be in the hands of Nie Tian. Nie Tian, how did the 7-kill star soul end up in your hands? Tang 13 calmed down and asked in astonishment. I obtained it unintentionally. Nie Tian faintly smiled and didn't explain too much. He directly stated, I will help you fuse with the complete killing destruction wolf astral soul now. Okay. Tang 13 heavily nodded his head, his eyes filled with joy. He couldn't wait any longer. After he fused with the destroying army astral soul, he desperately wanted to fuse with the 7-kill star soul and the greedy wolf astral soul. And when he saw how strong Nie Tian and desolate ghost astral soul were, he was even more eager to increase his strength. MHM. Nie Tian lightly nodded his head. His divine sense swept past Tang 13's body and discovered that the latter's strength had already reached the false sage realm. If he could fuse the 7-kill star soul and the greedy wolf astral soul, the power of the 3 stars would be sufficient to allow Tang 13 to break through to the false sage realm. Nie Tian didn't waste any time. He handed the 9 extremities over to desolate ghost astral soul as he and Tang 13 directly entered the 9 extremities. Within the 9 extremities, Nie Tian began to help Tang 13 fuse with the killing destruction wolf astral soul. With regards to fusing astral souls, Qin Wentian was already very familiar with it. In addition to the fact that Tang 13 had already fused with the army destroyer astral soul, it was extremely easy for him to fuse with the 7 kills astral soul and the greedy wolf astral soul. After a few hours, Nie Tian successfully fused the 7 kills astral soul and the greedy wolf astral soul into Tang 13's body. Boom! And at the instant the killing destruction wolf astral soul was completely fused, Tang 13's body trembled violently as a terrifying aura shot up to the skies. The aura was incomparably majestic, extremely terrifying. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. Under the impact of the aura, he couldn't even stand stably as he involuntarily retreated. After which, numerous astral runes appeared around Tang 13's body, forming the silhouette of a gigantic wolf. The killing destruction she had exuded was so dense that it seemed as though it wanted to devour the heavens and earth. Nie Tian could feel the aura of the gigantic wolf, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble. Chapter 34:28. He was Nie Tian. Tang 13 had just merged with the Slaughterwolf Star Soul, but his aura was already much stronger than the boundless desolate ghost. Without a doubt, Tang 13's current battle prowess was definitely not weaker than the boundless desolate ghost. At this moment, Tang 13's cultivation had successfully advanced to the 9th rank pseudo-sage. Nie Tian could even feel a mysterious aura from Tang 13. It was similar to the aura of the white-robed cultivator from before. The Slaughterwolf Star Soul is indeed terrifying. It almost allowed this kid to break through to the sage realm. The Ghost Emperor could not help but exclaim, "The aura of Tianyun circulating around him is a sign of a cultivator breaking through to the sage realm. Could it be that Tang 13 is about to break through to the sage realm?" Nie Tian's eyes widened as he exclaimed in joy. Just a little more. The Ghost Emperor shook his head. Actually, the sage realm is not as mysterious as the cultivators in the realms think. The reason why the cultivators in the realms are unable to break through to the sage realm is not because their talent is lacking, but because they are suppressed by the realms. It is almost impossible to become a sage in the realms. Since the immemorial era, every cultivator who became a sage in the realms eventually reached the peak of the sage realm and became a divine ancestor. Unfortunately, becoming a sage in the realms can only be achieved by true geniuses. This kid called Tang 13's talent is definitely top-notch. Even in the sage realm, he can be considered a peak genius. But he is still a little lacking if he wants to become a sage in the realms. Tian looked at Tang 13 and nodded, not saying anything. He felt that his talent should be similar to Tang 13's. Since Tang 13 was unable to become a sage in the realms under the impact of the Slaughterwolf Star Soul, his chances of becoming a sage in the realms were not high. Tian, if you want to become a sage in the realms, you need a strong force. The Ghost Emperor could tell what Tian was thinking and said in a low voice. Eyebrows furrowed. Tian smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that it's not realistic for me to improve my strength now. I'm confident that with my current strength, I won't be at a disadvantage even if I were to face Tian Yun's saint disciple." The Ghost Emperor nodded, but his expression was a little ugly. Just as Tian had said, with his strength, it wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with a heavenly charm saint. But the Ghost Emperor was worried that the faction behind the Juying Divine Palace might have sent even stronger warriors besides the heavenly charm saints. Tian had no problem fighting against a low-level heavenly charm saint, but it would be very difficult for him to fight against a high-level heavenly charm saint. If he encountered a heavenly mandate Saint Master, he would be completely powerless. I hope the Revelations Saint Master won't show up. The Ghost Emperor sighed and didn't say anything else. Then, Tian and Tang 13 left the Nine Extremities. Tian, Tang 13. Desolate Ghost saw the two of them coming out and exclaimed in joy. He then noticed that Tang 13's chi had grown much stronger. His eyes widened in shock. Tian nodded slightly and spread out his divine sense. After confirming that there was no one around, he relaxed a little. Tian, what do we do next? Desolate Ghost looked at Tian and asked nervously. He had just walked around the Juying city and found that the entire city was very desolate. There wasn't a single person on the streets. It was as if the entire city had become a dead city. Tian, we'll have to fight the Juying Divine Palace head-on sooner or later. Why don't we just attack the temple? Tang 13 already knew about Mo Rushi's situation. Tian didn't hesitate and nodded. He didn't know how many cultivators the Juying Divine Palace had, but he had to save Mo Rushi, so he might as well fight. Then let's go to the temple now. Desolate Ghost's eyes trembled as he said gravely. Tian agreed, and the three of them shot into the sky at the same time, heading towards the Juying Divine Palace in the center of the city. They had decided to fight the Juying Divine Palace head-on, so they no longer had any scruples and headed straight for the Juying Divine Palace. You three ants, you have finally appeared. Just as the three of them appeared in the sky above the temple, a deep and familiar voice rang out. Then, a figure appeared. It was the martialist in white. At the same time, more than a dozen martialists in black appeared with the martialist in white. They all had the strength of a ninth-stage pseudo-sacred. It seems that you have been waiting for us. Tian looked at the martialist in white, the corners of his mouth twitching slightly. His aura was extremely cold and exuded a strong demonic aura. However, the martialist in white didn't seem to care about him. His sinister eyes were fixed on Desolate Ghost and Tang 13. I really didn't expect you two to be Star Lords, he said coldly. When Tian heard the word Star Lord, he couldn't help but narrow his eyes. He hadn't expected the martialist in white to know about Star Lords. If this astral envoy did not see wrongly, you are the Azure Dragon Star Lord, right? Following that, the martialist in white's eyes flickered with a sinister light as he stared at Desolate Ghost playfully. So what if I am? Desolate Ghost replied coldly. His entire body surged with spear intent, ready to attack at any moment. Very good. The martialist in white smiled sinisterly and said, I really didn't expect that the Azure Dragon Star Soul that I've been searching for so long would actually be with a Realmverse cultivator. How interesting. In the next moment, the martialist in white looked at Tang 13. His sinister smile suddenly froze. There was even some fear, as if he had discovered something horrifying. Are you surprised? Tang 13 saw his reaction and laughed. She looked very provocative. This astral envoy is indeed very surprised. You actually managed to merge with the complete Slaughterwolf Star Soul. It seems that your talent is very high. The martialist in white said sinisterly, his tone cold. Earlier, he was still shocked that Tang 13's strength had suddenly increased. It turned out that she had merged with the complete Slaughterwolf Star Soul. A Realmverse cultivator had actually managed to merge with the complete Slaughterwolf Star Soul. This was indeed very surprising. My talent should be higher than yours. Tang 13 smiled indifferently. Her calmness was tinged with insolence. Umph. The martialist in white laughed coldly. Finally, he turned his gaze to Nietian. With an incomparably cold expression, he smiled and said, Brat, one of them is the Azure Dragon Star Lord, and the other is the Slaughterwolf Star Lord. Who are you? You can't be more terrifying than them, right? He is Nietian. Nietian frowned. Before he could speak, a low voice suddenly rang out in the void. Ingqinyu. When he heard this voice, his eyes suddenly trembled. He looked up and saw a black-robed figure appear in the void. It was none other than the Jueying Temple Lord, Ingqinyu. At this moment, beside Ingqinyu stood a green-clothed woman. She had a peerless appearance and a beauty that could topple cities. Furthermore, she was very young, not even 20 years old. She seemed even younger than the white-clothed cultivator. Nietian? At this moment, the martialist in white suddenly reacted. He was shocked and could not help but let out a strange cry. Then, he looked at Nietian with a cold, murderous intent. Chapter 34:29. The Star Master, Nietian? The white-clothed cultivator's eyes trembled when he heard Ingqinyu call out Nietian's name. He had not expected that the silver-haired cultivator, who had not caught his attention at all, was actually Nietian. Ingqinyu, you finally appeared. Nietian ignored the white-clothed cultivator. Instead, he locked his gaze on Ingqinyu and said coldly, Nietian, your rate of growth has amazed me. Ingqinyu looked at Nietian. He had already sensed the latter's strength. His eyes trembled slightly, and he did not hide his surprise at all. He had not expected Nietian to grow so quickly. In just a few short years, he had actually reached the 9th stage. It was truly terrifying. Ingqinyu looked at Nietian. He had already sensed the latter's strength. His eyes trembled slightly, and he did not hide his surprise at all. Ingqinyu, you're already a heavenly charm saint. At this moment, Nietian's consciousness swept over Ingqinyu. He could not help but narrow his eyes in surprise. He sensed an aura similar to the white-clothed cultivators from Ingqinyu. It was the aura of heavenly charm power. This undoubtedly meant that Ingqinyu was already a heavenly charm saint. Ingqinyu was indeed an expert and a genius. However, Nietian believed that Ingqinyu's talent was not enough to reach the level of a heavenly charm saint. Ingqinyu was indeed an expert and a genius. However, Nietian believed that Ingqinyu's talent was not enough to reach the level of a saint. Ingqinyu could not help but tremble when he heard Nietian's words. He was quite shocked. He clearly did not expect Nietian to know about a heavenly charm saint. However, he calmed down in the next moment. His lips curled into a smile, and he said coldly, Nietian, it seems that I have underestimated you. Ingqinyu, I have also underestimated your Jueying Divine Palace. Nietian also sneered. Afterwards, he glanced past the woman in green beside Ingqinyu and said, I never thought the Jueying Divine Hall would actually be hiding an organization from the Saint's world. No wonder they're so greedy and want to take in so many things. At this moment, Nietian looked calm on the surface, but his heart was a little flustered. That young green-clad girl, who had remained silent all this while, had withdrawn her aura. However, Nietian could still sense that her strength far surpassed that of Ingqinyu and the white-clad cultivator. Nietian was a little worried. If this woman in green was a heavenly mandate Saint Master, then it would be troublesome. You are Nietian? At this time, the green-robed woman finally spoke. Her voice was cold and aloof, but it had a strange charm that made people want to continue listening to her. Who are you people? Nietian frowned. His gaze swept across the green-robed woman and the white-robed man as he asked in a cold voice. "I am Qianlong Xie, an astrologer of the Wanqing Pavilion," the green-robed woman said coldly. The green-clothed woman spoke coldly. Her exquisite face did not reveal any emotions at all. Following that, she looked at the white-clothed cultivator and continued, "He is called Qiu Cheng, an envoy under me. We came to the myriad realms this time for you." So Qianlong Xie was the astrologer that Qiu Cheng had mentioned. It was obvious that Qianlong Xie's status was much higher than Qiu Cheng's, so his strength was undoubtedly much higher. For me, facing Qianlong Xie's honesty, Nie Tian let out a cold laugh and said in a low voice, "It must be because of something I have. Is there a difference?" The corner of Qianlong Xie's mouth twitched. "As long as you hand over the Star Origin Stone, I can guarantee that your wife and child will be unharmed. Do you think I'll believe your guarantee?" Nie Tianling laughed as a cold light flickered in his eyes. Although this woman called Qianlong Xie had given him a guarantee, Nie Tian didn't believe her. Furthermore, the Star Origin Stone had already fused with him. How could he give it to someone else? More importantly, the Star Origin Stone wasn't just a powerful force to Nie Tian. It was also a responsibility. He always remembered that he was responsible for rebuilding the Star Sacred Domain. "Are you going to challenge the entire Zhuiying Shrine by yourself?" Qianlong Xie's beautiful eyes flickered as her pretty face instantly turned cold. Nie Tian's forcefulness made her very impatient. "Why not?" Nie Tian's gaze was dark as he asked cold. There was only one path in front of him, and that was to defeat Zhuiying Temple and save Mo Rushi. "Astrologer, this kid is too arrogant. There's no need to waste words with him. Just kill him and take the Star Origin Stone." Before Qianlong Xie could speak, Qiu Cheng, who was standing to the side, couldn't hold back anymore. His eyes were cold as he shouted, "You think you can kill me?" Nie Tian laughed coldly as he looked at Qiu Cheng, his eyes filled with disdain. "How dare you look down on me?" Qiu Cheng was infuriated by Nie Tian's insolence. He roared as he stepped forward and bowed to Qianlong Xie. "Astrologer, please allow me to kill this person." Qianlong Xie's beautiful eyes flickered as she glanced at Nie Tian. She hesitated for a moment before she finally said, "Qiu Cheng, don't underestimate your enemy." "Yes." Qiu Cheng's eyes flashed as he replied. His figure instantly moved. He leapt into the air and looked at Nie Tian cold. He said arrogantly, "Nie Tian, come and die." The corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched coldly as he took a step into the air to confront Qiu Cheng. Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost Boundless looked at the two people in the sky and couldn't help but feel nervous. Qiu Cheng was a Sage Realm warrior after all. Could Nie Tian really be his match? At this moment, Qianlong Xie was also a little nervous. Her beautiful eyes were locked on Nie Tian from afar. She wanted to see what Nie Tian was capable of to be chosen by the Star Original Stone. A mere rank 9 pseudo-Sage Realm warrior dares to be so insolent in front of me. Don't you know that everyone below the Sage Realm is an ant? High up in the sky, Qiu Cheng looked down at Nie Tian with a disdainful expression and said coldly, "I'm a heavenly charm holy disciple, and you're only a false saint. In front of me, you're nothing but an ant. Is that so?" Nie Tian laughed and raised his eyebrows. He looked at Qiu Cheng as if he were looking at an idiot and said, "I'd like to see how you, the so-called heavenly charm divine disciple, are going to kill an ant like me." Everyone below the Sage Realm was an ant. Qiu Cheng's words made sense. However, it didn't apply to Nie Tian. He believed in strength, not cultivation. As long as he was strong enough, a rank 9 pseudo-Sage Realm warrior could kill a Sage Realm warrior. "You are courting death." Qiu Cheng was angered by Nie Tian's arrogance. He roared and his aura surged crazily. Waves of violent energy surged in the air. It was as if the whole world was going to collapse. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He saw a mysterious power surging outside Qiu Cheng's body. It was a unique power of a heavenly charm saint, the heavenly charm force. Chapter 3430. Heavenly Aura was also known as Saint Aura. It was the symbol of a heavenly aura cultivator. Only a heavenly disciple could unleash heavenly aura. Previously, when Tang 13 fused with the slaughter wolf astral soul, heavenly aura fluctuations appeared around her body. However, the intensity of the fluctuations was far from enough to allow her to break through to the heavenly aura realm. However, Qiu Cheng's heavenly aura was the true definition of heavenly aura. That kind of aura seemed endless and boundless, extremely terrifying. Qian Lanxia was filled with anticipation. He wanted to see if Nie Tian would be able to block Qiu Cheng's heavenly aura. "Aunt, this celestial envoy will kill you in one move with the power of heavenly rhythm." At this moment, Qiu Cheng coldly laughed, after which he slammed out with his palms, causing the entire space to tremble. A terrifying amount of energy gushed downwards, transforming into a gigantic palm that roared and enveloped Nie Tian. Nie Tian could feel the fluctuations in the air. He couldn't help but narrow his eyes, astonished at the strength of heavenly aura. Nie Tian, Tang 13, and Desolate Ghost couldn't help but exclaim in shock when they saw this. One couldn't deny that Qiu Cheng's strength had far exceeded their expectations. The aura he emitted caused their hearts to tremble involuntarily. Boom! In the next instant, the gigantic palm slammed down, causing the entire space to tremble as though it was about to collapse. Boom! At this moment, Nie Tian made his move. The sword intent in his body surged to the extreme as he slashed out with his devil sword of 7 absolutes. A terrifying sword shadow whistled through the air, causing the entire space to be filled with demonic chi. Boom! Following which, the sword and the palm collided. The sword shadow froze for a moment before shattering into pieces. That palm contained heavenly aura, a type of energy that surpassed divine force. Nie Tian's sword intent wasn't strong enough to contend against it. Bang! Following which, a muffled sound rang out. Nie Tian's silhouette was flung through the air, retreating thousands of meters. Pooh! After he stabilized himself, his body trembled uncontrollably as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. Heavenly aura was indeed strong. It could actually injure Nie Tian. At that moment, Qiu Cheng looked at Nie Tian. His expression was not one of joy, but of shock and anger. He had wanted to kill Nie Tian in one move by releasing his heavenly charm power. However, he had not expected that Nie Tian would be able to withstand his heavenly charm power and not die. This was the first time he had seen a pseudo-sacred martial cultivator block the power of the heavenly rhythm. Nie Tian, you really can't be compared to others. Qian Lanxia looked at Nie Tian from afar. Her beautiful eyes trembled and she was shocked. She had already expected this, but when she saw Nie Tian block the heavenly charm power, she was still extremely shocked. Nie Tian was indeed worthy of being the one chosen by the Star Essence Stone. He was truly terrifying. "Sir Envoy, is this all you've got?" At this time, Nie Tian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and smiled cold. His eyes were full of disdain. Qiu Cheng's attack was indeed powerful, but it was not enough to injure him. More importantly, Qiu Cheng had used his heavenly charm power, but Nie Tian had yet to use his true strength. "You're asking for it." Qiu Cheng's expression darkened as his aura suddenly skyrocketed. A terrifying force vibrated in the sky, as if it was going to destroy the heavens and earth. "Very well." Nie Tian's lips twitched as he said with a cold grin, "Then I shall play with you." Following this, his aura surged crazily as streams of terrifying sword intents turned violent in the sky. They were sharp like blades, as if they were going to tear everything apart. "Die!" Qiu Cheng's gaze froze as he sensed the sword intents in the sky. However, a murderous intent surged in the next second. He let out a roar and slammed his palm forward, intending to kill Nie Tian. Bang! Instantly, the sky trembled violently, as if the space was about to collapse. A terrifying aura spread out in all directions. The power that Qiu Cheng had unleashed was even more terrifying than before. Bloodline power? Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he sensed a powerful bloodline aura. From the look of it, Xiao Cheng had fused his bloodline power with his heavenly rhythm power. To be able to perfectly merge the power of bloodline with heavenly charm, Xiao Cheng's combat strength is comparable to a level 2 heavenly charm holy disciple. Qian Longxia's eyes flickered as she looked at Xiao Cheng. Xiao Cheng was originally a level 1 heavenly charm, but after using the power of bloodline, his combat strength was on par with a level 2 heavenly charm holy disciple. Wouldn't yet Tian be able to take this attack? Sacred heaven-defying sword. Heavenly sword reverses the sun. At that moment, Niet Tan, who was still in midair, swung his sword in a frenzy, sending sword shadows towards the huge hand in midair. Rumble. High up in the sky, two terrifying forces collided with each other. Violent forces raged wildly, forming a violent shockwave in the sky. Boom! Two muffled sounds were heard at the same time. Nietian and Xiao Cheng's figures were pushed back at the same time. Nietian steadied himself and stared at Xiao Cheng calmly. After Xiao Cheng steadied himself, there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. His face was flushed red. After the impact, the blood in his body was a little unstable. Aside from astonishment, there was also a hint of fear in his eyes as he looked at Nietian. That's right, fear. He had started to fear Nietian. How is this possible? Qian Longxia's eyes trembled as she looked at the scene in the sky. Her delicate face was filled with shock and disbelief. Xiao Cheng had used the power of bloodline to unleash an even more powerful force, but it was blocked by Nietian. Moreover, Nietian was not weaker than Xiao Cheng at all, and he even had the upper hand. Qian Longxia could tell that Nietian and Xiao Cheng's strength were on par. The reason Xiao Cheng was injured was because his martial body was weaker than Nietian's. This was the reason why she could not believe it. A sacred disciple with the support of heavenly rhythm force had a weaker martial body than a ninth order pseudo-sacred disciple. Was she dreaming? It was obvious that it was not because Xiao Cheng's martial body was too weak, but because Nietian's martial body was too strong. Qian Longxia could not imagine how a pseudo-sacred disciple's martial body was stronger than a heavenly rhythm martial body. Nietian's position in her heart soared once again. Her gaze toward Nietian had changed once again. It was filled with a hint of passion and desire. Sir Envoy, if that's all you have, you won't be able to kill an ant like me. At that instant, Nietian's lips twitched as he said in a strange tone, "Damn it." Xiao Cheng's face darkened as his eyes turned bloodshot like an enraged beast, as if he was about to explode. It's about time to end this. However, Nietian was as calm as still water. He allowed a faint smile and raised the Seven Despair demonic sword. A terrifying demonic sword aura appeared as a dark aura spread in the sky, like a terrifying beast opening its bloody mouth. Nietian only wanted to witness the power of heavenly rhythm force. Now that he had seen enough, it was time to end the battle. Chapter 34:31. Chapter 34:26. Forbidden Technicom. In the sky, a black silhouette of a sword fell down, carrying with it a murderous energy. It roared and seemed like it was going to swallow up the entire world. So powerful, Qian Longxia, who was thousands of meters away, sensed the terrifying vibrations of the sword. Her beautiful eyes quivered, and she couldn't help but exclaim. Now, she realized that Nietian didn't even reveal his true abilities. Now, Nietian was unleashing his true abilities to kill Xiao Cheng. Ow! Xiao Cheng's eyes flashed. He felt the murderous intent coming at him, and he couldn't help but scream. But he was a heavenly rhythmic warrior after all. He reacted immediately, and his chi exploded. He punched, and a terrifying amount of energy appeared. A shadow of a fist appeared in the sky, and it headed towards the sword. However, the shadow of the fist was weak, and it couldn't stop the sword. After a loud rumble, it crumbled. In the next second, Xiao Cheng screamed, and his silhouette was flung out. He drew a bloody arc in the sky, and only stopped after flying for thousands of meters. Xiao Cheng. Qian Longxia looked at Xiao Cheng and couldn't help but scream. Master, I am okay. Wretch. Qiu Cheng stabilized himself. His entire body was a bloody mess, but he was still holding on. Before he could even finish speaking, he puked out a mouthful of blood. His face was as white as paper, and his body was filled with violent sword energy. It was as if every meridian and every bone in his body was about to be torn apart. Only now did he realize how powerful Nietian was. A heavenly charm realm expert only has this much strength. How disappointing. At that moment, Nietian's cold voice rang out, filled with disdain. He looked at Qian Liangxie and said, "Lord Astrologer, isn't it your turn now?" Qian Liangxie's eyes flickered when he sensed the anger and sharpness in Nietian's eyes. He took a step forward, intending to join the fight himself. "Master, there is no need to use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken." However, at this moment, Ying Qinyu took a step forward instead, and he laughed gloomily as he said, "There's no need for Lord Starpriest to make a move against this kid. I'll be able to kill him." Qian Longxie turned around and looked at Ying Qinyu with a frown. He was obviously doubtful. Ying Qinyu's current strength was the same as Qiu Cheng's. The reason why he could break through to the Sage Realm was not because he was talented, but because Qian Longxie had given him a Sage Elixir. He was only able to break through the heavenly rhythmic realm with the help. In Qian Longxie's opinion, Ying Qinyu's strength was at most on par with Qiu Cheng's. Even Qiu Cheng was no match for Nietian. How could Ying Qinyu possibly defeat Nietian? But at this moment, Ying Qinyu looked as if he had a card up his sleeve and was brimming with confidence. Ying Qinyu knew what Qian Longxie was worried about, so he smiled and said confidently, "Lord Astrologer, please believe in me." Qian Longxie's eyes darkened. Without hesitation, she nodded. "Thank you, Master." Ying Qinyu's eyes lit up when he heard Qian Longxie's reply. He bowed and expressed his gratitude. He then took a step forward and soared into the sky. "Ying Qinyu, you're not afraid of death." Nietian's lips twitched as he looked at Ying Qinyu and said coldly. Ying Qinyu was the main culprit behind Mo Rushi's capture and the deaths of the Nie family and the Wind and Cloud Alliance. Nietian had thought that, as cunning as Ying Qinyu was, he would hide behind Qian Longxie instead of coming forward. He planned to defeat Qian Longxie first before settling the score with Ying Qinyu. He didn't expect Ying Qinyu, the old fox, to step forward. "Nietian, do you know where Mo Rushi is right now?" Ying Qinyu looked at Nietian and asked with a sinister smile. Nietian's eyes narrowed when he heard Ying Qinyu mention Mo Rushi. Killing intent surged in his eyes. "I can tell you that Mo Rushi is currently in a safe place." Ying Qinyu sneered. "But when she gives birth to your child, it will be her death." "Ying Qinyu, if Mo Rushi is injured, I will slaughter the entire Jing Divine Palace." Nietian's face darkened as he let out a thunderous roar. His furious aura shook the void. "Is that so?" Ying Qinyu sneered. His eyes flickered with a cold light. He had mentioned Mo Rushi to Nietian to provoke Nietian. A cultivator's battle strength would greatly decrease when they were enraged. "You're courting death." Nietian's eyes turned bloodshot as he let out a roar. His figure instantly moved, and he activated the Celestial Evolution Sacred Spirit. Streams of Celestial Evolution Sacred Force surged towards his martial physique, causing the sword intent around him to soar to the maximum. So scary. Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost faces changed at the same time as they witnessed this scene. Nietian's strength was more terrifying than they had imagined. Ying Qinyu's eyes trembled. He did not expect Nietian to hold back when he was fighting against Qiu Cheng. "Die!" At that moment, Nietian let out a roar. His figure was like a wild beast as he swung the Seven Despair demonic sword furiously. The sword's shadows whistled as an enormous demonic aura surged in the void, suffocating everyone. Boom! At the same time, Ying Qinyu's eyes darkened as his aura surged. Terrifying black runes gushed out from his body. The murderous aura was thick and extremely strange. As soon as the black runes appeared, his aura surged wildly. Absolute Shadow, Forbidden Rune. Qian Longxia's eyes flickered with surprise. She finally understood why Ying Qinyu had dared to challenge Nie Tian. It was because he had the absolute shadow forbidden rune. The absolute shadow forbidden rune was a terrifying forbidden technique. Once it was activated, it would instantly increase a cultivator's cultivation. Qian Longxia did not expect Ying Qinyu to have such a terrifying absolute shadow forbidden rune in his body. Furthermore, the latter's control over the forbidden rune was beyond her expectations. Boom! In the blink of an eye, Ying Qinyu's aura surged crazily. He had forcefully increased his cultivation to the third layer heavenly aura. There were 6 realms of the Sage Realm, and each realm could be further divided into 9 layers. Previously, Ying Qinyu was only at the first layer heavenly aura. Now, with the activation of the absolute shadow forbidden rune, his cultivation had reached the third layer heavenly aura. Although the difference between the first layer and third layer heavenly aura seemed to be only 2 small realms, there was a qualitative difference. The reason why the heavenly aura realm was called heavenly aura was because a cultivator could gather the power of heavenly aura at the heavenly aura realm. A first-layer heavenly aura realm cultivator could only gather 1 stream of heavenly aura force, while a third-layer heavenly aura realm cultivator could gather 3 streams of heavenly aura force. As for the power of heavenly aura, it could be combined and activated, increasing its power by several times. Therefore, a third-layer heavenly aura realm cultivator's battle strength could be increased by several times, or even dozens of times compared to the first-layer heavenly aura realm. Boom! 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 At that instant, Ying Qinyu's face sank. A cold smile appeared on his face as he gathered 3 streams of heavenly aura force and soared into the sky like 3 giant dragons. Chapter 34-32. 3427. Don't kill him. Bang! In the sky, Nie Tian's figure trembled and was sent flying by the huge impact. Nie Tian, Tang, 13, and Desolate Ghost exclaimed at the same time. Die! At this moment, Ying Qinyu growled and attacked again. A long sword appeared in his hand, and he slashed out fiercely. The shadow of the sword was like a waterfall of flowing light that descended from the sky and pressed down on Nie Tian. Ying Qinyu did not hold back at all in this attack. He attacked with all his strength, obviously intending to kill Nie Tian directly. Whoosh! However, at this moment, a pair of astral soul wings suddenly appeared on Nie Tian's back. The wings flapped violently in the sky, and he stabilized his body. Then he slashed out with his sword. Rumble! In the sky, the 2 shadows of the sword collided with each other, causing a huge explosion in the sky. Nie Tian's figure was pushed back for 10,000 meters before he could stabilize his body. A few wounds appeared on his body, and blood gushed out continuously. However, his eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Ying Qinyu in the distance. He did not expect Ying Qinyu to be able to burst out such a terrifying force in an instant. He was too careless. He's still alive under such circumstances. Qian Longxia stared at Nie Tian from afar. Her beautiful eyes trembled slightly, and she was extremely surprised. For a moment, she thought Nie Tian was dead for sure. However, he was still able to fight and was not seriously injured. Not only was Nie Tian talented in martial arts terrifying, his talent in battle was even stronger. Nie Tian, what strength do you have to fight me now? At this moment, Ying Qinyu's arrogant voice resounded in the sky. He took a step forward, and the sword aura around his body surged crazily like a huge sword, causing the void to tremble. Come on! Nie Tianling laughed. His eyes were as cold as ice, and the sword intent around his body surged once again. He was only injured because he was caught off guard by Ying Qinyu. The real battle had just begun. Sword rhythm aura. Ying Qinyu stared at Nie Tian, and his eyes couldn't help but tremble. He actually sensed the aura of sword rhyme from Nie Tian, and the shock in his heart was indescribable. Never had he imagined that Nie Tian had actually attained the realm of sword rhythm. Nie Tian, even if you're a swordsman of sword charm, it won't change anything. You'll definitely die in this battle. In the next moment, Ing Qinyu calmed down, and he roared in a low voice before he directly slashed with his sword. Nietian's sword realm was only at the first level of sword rhythm, while he was at the third level of heavenly rhythm. Why would he be afraid of Nietian? Really? Niet Tianling laughed, and the sword intent in his body surged violently. Waves of sword intent surged violently, and a mysterious sword intent aura appeared on the 7 ultimate demon sword. It was the power of the sword rhythm. The power of the sword rhythm. Qian Longxia's beautiful eyes couldn't help but tremble as she stared at Nietian, and she couldn't help but exclaim. Nietian was only at the first level of sword rhythm, but he was able to condense the sword rhythm in an instant. It was too terrifying. What puzzled her even more was how Nietian had improved his sword principle realm in an instant. Nietian's talent in sword principle was indeed terrifying. He wasn't a true swordsman of sword charm, but he had forcefully broken through to the sword rhythm realm with the help of the sacred spirit. However, under such circumstances, he was able to condense the sword rhythm. His comprehension of sword principle was unprecedented. One should know that many swordsmen of sword charm might not be able to condense the power of the sword rhythm. I'll kill you with one strike. At that moment, the corner of Nietian's mouth twitched, and the demonic aura on the 7 ultimate demon sword surged. It was as if endless darkness had enveloped the space within tens of thousands of meters. Ing Qinyu couldn't help but exclaim when he felt the demonic aura assaulting him, making him feel like he was suffocating. However, he didn't retreat at all. Instead, he attacked even more crazily. Niet Tian's strength made him understand that Niet Tian must not be left alive. Boom! Ing Qinyu's sword fell, and the terrifying sword shadow pressed down on Niet Tian. The surrounding space seemed to be unable to withstand the force and was about to collapse in the next moment. Buzz! However, at that moment, Niet Tian made his move. The 7 ultimate demon swords soared into the sky, and an eerie sword cry burst out in the air. In an instant, Ing Qinyu heard endless roars in his ears, as if thousands of ghosts were wailing. Then, his divine sense was attacked, causing him to be momentarily dazed. Kill! At the same time, Niet Tian let out a low roar, and a sword shadow soared into the sky, roaring in the void. Boom! Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, the 2 sword shadows collided in the air, and the surrounding space suddenly sank. Then, one of the sword shadows collapsed and turned into a violent wave. No! Then, Ing Qinyu suddenly woke up and saw a giant sword shadow charging at him like a giant beast. He couldn't help but scream, and his face was filled with extreme shock. The sudden scene made Qian Longxia's eyes tremble. She gasped and was speechless. Just now, even she was attacked by the divine sense and was stunned for a moment. Who would have thought that within Niet Tian's sword will, there would be such a terrifying spiritual attack? At that moment, Qian Longxia wanted to save Ing Qinyu, but it was too late. Boom! The giant sword shadow, with a huge amount of demonic aura, pressed down on Ing Qinyu and drowned his figure. Qian Longxia's eyes trembled, and her pretty face stiffened. She couldn't react for a long time. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the void, violent forces attacked wildly, and the space was chaotic. However, right at that moment, Niet Tian's figure suddenly moved. Like a streak of light, he dashed towards the raging waves in the air. The next moment, his figure appeared again, and there was a bloody figure in his hand. It was Ing Qinyu. It turned out that Ing Qinyu hadn't died under the attack of the sword shadow, and he was still alive. Ing Qinyu. Seeing that Ing Qinyu wasn't dead, Qian Longxia's eyes flickered, and she shouted in surprise. Lord Astrologer. Ing Qinyu raised his head with difficulty and looked at Qian Longxia. His eyes trembled, and he used all his strength to spit out 2 words, "Save me." Qian Longxia frowned and stepped forward, intending to attack. Lord Astrologer, it seems that Ing Qinyu is very important to you. Niet Tianling laughed, and a sword was released from his palm. He held Ing Qianyu firmly, and his face was gloomy. He could have killed Ing Qianyu with that attack, but he didn't because he felt that Ing Qianyu still had value. He could tell that Qian Longxia was worried about Ing Qianyu and didn't want Ing Qianyu to attack. Nie Tian guessed that Ing Qianyu had another identity besides the Juying Hallmaster. At this moment, Ing Qianyu was in his hands. With a single thought, the latter would be obliterated. Nie Tian, don't kill him. Qian Longxia's body froze, and he couldn't hide the panic on his face. Lord Astrologer, it's fine if you don't let me kill him, but I have a condition. Nie Tian saw that Qian Longxia was so flustered, and he smiled wickedly and said, I want to see Mo Rushi. Mo Rushi. Nie Tian wanted to use Ing Qianyu's life to threaten Qian Longxia and force Mo Rushi to show herself. Nie Tian had to see Mo Rushi at least first to make sure that she was fine. Mo Rushi. Qian Longxia's beautiful eyes trembled when she heard Nie Tian's words. She hesitated for a moment, and then said, She is no longer here. Nie Tian's face darkened, and his eyes turned cold. A cold gleam flashed across his eyes, and he said, Then I'm sorry. After saying that, he moved his palm slightly, and the sword will instantly tightened. Ing Qianyu's body trembled, and he was about to be torn to pieces in the next moment. Chapter 34-33. Kill at will. Nie Tian heard Qian Longxia shout and immediately stopped. He smiled coldly and said, Lord Astrologer, it seems that Ing Qianyu is indeed very important. Qian Longxia looked at Nie Tian with a gloomy expression. After a moment of silence, he said, Nie Tian, you should understand how strong your child will be with your talent and Mo Rushi's. Ing Qianyu is indeed very important, but it is impossible for you to use his life to exchange for Mo Rushi. Am I not the one you want? What does it have to do with my child and Mo Rushi? Nie Tian's eyes darkened when he heard Qian Longxia's words. He said coldly, Even if Ing Qianyu can't exchange for Mo Rushi, at least let me see her. I already said that Mo Rushi isn't here. Qian Longxia's beautiful eyes trembled. If you let Ing Qianyu go, I guarantee that you will be able to see Mo Rushi. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and his face darkened. Qian Longxia, it seems that you really think of me as a 3-year-old child. Nie Tian absolutely did not believe that Mo Rushi wasn't in Juying Temple. Nie Tian, what are you doing? Qian Longxia suddenly sensed the murderous intent in Nie Tian's eyes and couldn't help but cry out. Since you want to see Ing Qianyu die, I will grant your wish. The corners of Nie Tian's mouth twitched. With a thought, the sword intent that enveloped Ing Qianyu's body suddenly became violent. It suddenly tightened and turned into sharp blades that penetrated his body. No! Qian Longxia's beautiful eyes trembled, and she screamed in horror. However, it was too late. Boom! In the next instant, there was a muffled sound. Ing Qianyu directly exploded and turned into a bloody light that dissipated. The Juying Temple Lord, once a peak expert of the myriad domain, a heavenly charm saint disciple, was dead. The bloody scene made everyone's eyes tremble, and the scene fell into a deathly silence. No one would have thought that Nie Tian would actually be so violent, killing just like that. Qian Longxia was stunned for a few seconds. Finally, he came to his senses and growled. His delicate face showed a hint of ferocity. She had originally thought that she would be able to stabilize Nie Tian, but she had never imagined that Nie Tian would be too ferocious. He did not hesitate at all and directly killed Ing Qianyu. Qian Langyi, if I don't see Mo Rushi, I will continue to kill. Nie Tian's eyes flickered with coldness as he stared at Qian Longxia and said word by word, Even if it's you, I will still kill you. Impudent! Qian Longxia was completely enraged. He roared and stepped forward. His aura exploded out, causing the space around him to tremble as if it was going to collapse. A Tier 9 pseudo-saint martial artist actually wanted to kill her, a star administrator. How could she not be furious? Nie Tian, you think too highly of yourself. Qian Longxia's aura exploded as he growled coldly. I can tell you that Mo Rushi is in the Absolute Shadow Temple, but you won't have the chance to see her. Is that so? Nietion's gaze trembled and blazed. The corners of his mouth rose in a cold arc. He had guessed correctly. Mo Rushi was in the Absolute Shadow Temple. After Mo Rushi had been brought to the Absolute Shadow Temple, Yu and the others had wanted to send her into the Sacred Realm. However, when passing through the crack in the Sacred Realm, she would have to bear a great deal of space-time pressure. It was very risky. In the end, they had left Mo Rushi in the Absolute Shadow Temple. Yu knew that Nietion would definitely return. He was worried that he would not be able to stop Nietion with his own strength. So he had alerted the Myriad Star Pavilion behind the Absolute Shadow Temple. The Myriad Star Pavilion had sent Qianlongxie and the others. With Qianlongxie's help, Yu had successfully broken through to the Heavenly Charm Realm. He had originally thought that the Absolute Shadow Temple would be impregnable. No matter how heaven-defying Nietion was, he would not be able to pose a threat to the Absolute Shadow Temple. But he had never imagined that in his battle with Nietion, he would die at the hands of Nietion. Nietion, do you know who Yu is? Qianlongxie's aura was violent and cold. He stood there like an iceberg. It was very frightening. He's already a dead man. What's the point of telling me all this? Tianling smiled coldly. Waves of violent power were constantly released from his body. He was accumulating power, preparing to explode with a terrifying blow. Yes, there's no point in talking to a dead man like you. Qianlongxie's cold eyes trembled. Suddenly, a terrible power exploded from his body. His slender body shook slightly, and countless ice blades appeared behind him. Nietion's eyebrows furrowed as he sensed the coldness in the air. His eyes flickered involuntarily. So Qianlongxie was an ice-based martialist. No wonder the aura around her was so cold. The moment Qianlongxie's aura was released, frost and snow floated in the air for tens of thousands of meters around her. The world fell into a cold winter. Kill! Qianlongxie roared. Suddenly, the countless ice blades behind her moved with a loud bang. Like a raging wave, they howled through the air and pressed down on Nietion. Crack, crack, crack. Suddenly, there was a tearing sound in the air. After the space froze, it was being torn apart. The space-time storms that gushed out of the cracks were frozen before they could release their power. This, Tang 13 and desolate Ghost Wujian's expressions changed when they saw this. They were so shocked that they could not speak. Qianlongxie was too frightening. This kind of ice power could freeze and tear everything apart. Humph! On the other side, Envoy Qiu Cheng, who had recovered slightly, chuckled coldly and thought to himself, Brat, Master Star is a 9th layer Heavenly Charm Sacred Disciple. Even if she doesn't use her Heavenly Charm force, you won't be able to resist her. Just accept your death. Qianlongxie was a 9th layer Heavenly Charm Sacred Disciple, which meant that she could accumulate 9 streams of Heavenly Charm Force at the same time. However, she did not use her Heavenly Charm Force against a 9th layer Sacred Disciple like Nietion. Even under such circumstances, the power she unleashed had far surpassed Yu's. A 9th layer Heavenly Charm Sacred Disciple strength was still terrifying without using her Heavenly Charm Force. Qianlongxie's eyes flickered coldly. She had already decided to kill him. After killing Nietion, as long as she was quick enough, she would be able to obtain the Stellar Primary Stone. High up in the sky, Nietion's expression was calm as he faced the overwhelming number of ice blades, showing no sign of fear. As the ice blades roared, the space in their path froze and shattered. Waves of terrifying cold energy assaulted him, causing Nietion to feel as if all the meridians in his body were about to freeze. Bang! At this moment, he made his move. His sword intent soared into the sky as the 7 extinction demonic sword slashed at the ice blades that filled the sky. A terrifying sword shadow, like a dragon breaking out from the abyss, charged at the endless ice blades. You're courting death. Qianlongxie's lips curled into a cold grin when she saw that Nietion did not try to dodge, but chose to face her head-on instead. Chapter 34:34. Taking down the enemy in one move, this lunatic is simply courting death. Xiao Cheng's eyes flickered with a venomous glint as he stared at the scene in the sky. At first, he was worried that Nie Tian had some heaven-defying means to evade Qian Longxie's attack. But now, Nie Tian had chosen to fight Qian Longxie head-on. He was clearly courting death. He firmly believed that Nie Tian was dead for sure. Nie Tian, Tang 13, and Desolate Ghost's eyes widened. It was obvious that they were frightened by Nie Tian's actions. Their faces stiffened. They hadn't expected Nie Tian to be this ferocious. He was able to fight against a 9th-stage heavenly charm expert with the strength of a 9th-stage pseudo-sage. Boom! In the next moment, the huge sword shadow was like a giant dragon, rushing into the sky full of ice blades. The void suddenly trembled, the wild power wreaked havoc, and the space-time storm actually collapsed, forming a space-time turbulence. Bang, 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 chi-chi-chi. Following that, violent noises resounded in the air, as if heaven and earth were collapsing. Tang 13 and the rest watched as the gigantic sword image crumbled bit by bit under the onslaught of countless ice blades. It seemed as though it would not be able to withstand the onslaught any longer. At this time, Nie Tian's figure actually followed behind the sword shadow and rushed forward. Tang 13 froze and couldn't react for a long time. He didn't understand what Nie Tian was trying to do. As Nie Tian hovered in midair, a layer of starlight shield appeared around his body. At the same time, there was also a layer of space-time shield. However, this still couldn't stop the invasion of the cold, making his entire body feel like it was about to be frozen. He endured the cold air and charged at Qian Longxie. Bang! But at this moment, the gigantic sword shadow couldn't hold on any longer. Under the impact of the icy blades, it shattered with a bang and transformed into a violent wave of sword intent that swept out. Nie Tian's figure swayed, and his eyes couldn't help but narrow. He hadn't expected Qian Longxie's icy blades to be so terrifying. His sword had accumulated a large amount of sword intent, and he had even infused the 9 Xian Karma into the sword intent, but it was still unable to withstand Qian Longxie's attack. Whoosh! 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 The moment the sword shadows shattered, numerous ice blades shot madly towards Nie Tian like sharp arrows, howling madly as they shot towards him. Nie Tian couldn't help but frown. Instead of retreating, he forcibly released a huge amount of dragon qi to resist the cold air. At the same time, he dodged swiftly and agilely, avoiding most of the ice blades. Qian Longxie's beautiful eyes flickered as she looked down at Nie Tian. She sneered and said, "An ant like you wants to get close to me?" She was shocked that Nie Tian's strength was so terrifying. If Nie Tian had retreated after slashing out with his sword, he might have survived. But now, Nie Tian took the initiative to rush over. This was courting death. She couldn't understand why Nie Tian would rush over. Was he an idiot? But none of that mattered anymore. She was confident that Nie Tian would be killed by the ice blades before he could even get within 10,000 meters of her. Meanwhile, Qian Longxie's eyes flickered with a passionate glow. She was ready to retrieve the stellar primary stone. Puff! 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 At that moment, numerous ice blades landed on Nie Tian's body, leaving bloody wounds on him. In the blink of an eye, he was covered in blood. However, he managed to avoid being hit in his vital organs with his nimble movements. Meanwhile, the dragon qi circulating in his body helped him block the invasion of the cold air. "I'm almost done." Nie Tian's body was covered in blood, but his eyes flickered with determination as he locked onto Qian Longxie from afar. Following this, a pair of stellar soul wings suddenly appeared on his back. His speed increased as he charged straight at Qian Longxie. Qian Longxie's eyebrows furrowed slightly. She suddenly sensed a threat and felt an inexplicable sense of panic. But she didn't believe that Nie Tian could pose a threat to her. Now, however, right at that moment, the corner of Nie Tian's mouth twitched, and his face turned cold and creepy. In the next moment, a strange black magical symbol appeared in the corner of his right eye. It was none other than the ultimate devil destruction seal. Nie Tian was approaching Qian Longxie to activate the extreme demonic seal. Qian Longxie's heart skipped a beat when she saw the extreme demonic seal at the corner of Nie Tian's eye. She panicked. She felt a strong sense of threat from the extreme demonic seal. Whoosh! In the next moment, Nie Tian's right eye trembled slightly, and a terrifying dark eye power surged out, condensing into a blade in the air. It was sharp to the extreme and filled with killing intent. It seemed as if it would tear apart everything in its path. Bang, bang, bang. The blade of eye power was unstoppable. Everywhere it passed, the ice blade shattered. How? Qian Longxie felt the aura of death approaching. Her eyes trembled and she was speechless. She didn't expect Nie Tian to be a other pupil martialist. Furthermore, he could instantly unleash such a terrifying eye power attack. The power released by the extreme demon annihilation seal made Qian Longxie feel incredulous. Nie Tian was only a pseudo-saint martial artist at the 9th step. Even if he had the other pupil, he shouldn't be able to release such a terrifying eye power. But it was too late. Ugh! In the next moment, before Qian Longxie could resist at all, the eye power blade pierced through her chest. Blood spurted out and dyed half of her body red. Following that, the power of darkness filled her body and actually sealed her 9 vital meridians. How is this possible? Qian Longxie's eyes trembled as she screamed in shock. She didn't expect Nie Tian's eye power to be so domineering that it sealed her yuan meridians instantly. At that moment, Nie Tian's figure descended like a ray of light. Following this, Nie Tianling laughed and unleashed a sword intent that imprisoned Qian Longxie. You? Qian Longxie raised her head and stared at the cold expression on Nie Tian's face. She was so shocked that she couldn't speak. She couldn't believe that she was being controlled by Nie Tian. Only now did she realize that Nie Tian didn't want to kill her at all. Instead, he wanted to control her. If Nie Tian really wanted to kill her, that blade of eye power would have taken her life. How is this possible? At that moment, Qiu Cheng, who was far away, suddenly let out a strange cry. Then his entire body turned to stone like a piece of wood. As for the others, they were incomparably shocked and were similarly stunned. Such a scene was something that they had never expected. Not only did Qian Longxie fail to kill Nie Tian, but she was also restrained by Nie Tian with a single move. This was unbelievable. How could Nie Tian be so terrifying? Tang 13 and Desolated Ghost were stunned too. They could not believe the sudden turn of events. After a long time, the two of them finally reacted. Their bodies were already drenched in cold sweat. Nie Tian, what are you trying to do? Qian Longxie calmed down. Her face was dark, and her eyes were filled with anger and unwillingness as she spoke in a deep voice. Chapter 34-35. Starry Forbidden Space. Nie Tian, how dare you threaten me? Qian Longxie's beautiful eyes trembled as she growled after hearing Nie Tian's words. She never imagined that she would be reduced to a tool in Nie Tian's hands. One could imagine how furious she was right now. She had been too careless and underestimated Nie Tian's strength. If she had used her heavenly charm power just now, Nie Tian wouldn't have been able to get within 10,000 meters of her. If Nie Tian couldn't get within 10,000 meters of her, the extreme demonic destruction seal wouldn't have been much of a threat to her. However, there was no point in regretting now. She had already fallen into Nie Tian's hands. Master Astrologer, I'm not threatening you right now. Nie Tianling chuckled and stared at Qiu Cheng coldly. It's him. In that instant, Nie Tian could have killed Qian Longxie, but he didn't do so in order to spare the latter's life so that he could see Mo Rushi. Moreover, Qian Longxie was now completely under his control. He could kill Qian Longxie in an instant with just a thought. Qiu Cheng was stunned and only reacted at this moment. He was so shocked that he couldn't speak. How could he not know that Nie Tian was using Qian Longxie's life as a threat to see Mo Rushi? Qiu Cheng, I'm sure you don't want to see your master astrologer die, right? Nie Tian's lips twitched as he said coldly. Don't kill master astrologer. Cho Chung was completely panicking at this moment. His forehead was covered in cold sweat as he hurriedly said, "Don't you want to see Mo Rushi?" "No problem. Qianlong Xie, this subordinate of yours is very wise." Nye Tian let out a cold laugh. "Cho Chung, you can't let Mo Rushi come out." Qianlong Xie's eyes trembled as he yelled, "Master Astrologer, this..." Cho Chung was stunned and didn't know what to do. "Qianlong Xie, it's better for you to shut up." Nye Tian frowned, and his expression darkened. As soon as he said this, a sword intent sealed Qian Longxia's mouth. "Cho Chung, where is Mo Rushi?" He stared at Cho Chung and asked Cho coldly. Cho Chung swallowed and said in a trembling voice, "Nye Tian, I'll let you see Mo Rushi. You mustn't kill Lord Astrologer." "Where are they?" Nye Tian asked in a deep, oppressive voice, his face grim. Cho Cheng's eyes flickered as he recalled the scene where Nye Tian had just killed Ying Qianyu. He had already witnessed how violent Nye Tian was. If Tian died, he would be Tian, Qian Tian, Cho Tian, Qian, and Nye Tian Qian would also. If Qian Longxia died, Cho Cheng wouldn't be able to live either. Cho Cheng was a star envoy under Qian Longxia. According to the rules of the Myriad Star Pavilion, if a star envoy died, the star envoy would have to be buried with him. Cho Cheng is Qian Longxia's underling. According to the rules of the Myriad Stars Pavilion, if an astrologer dies, the envoys have to be buried with him. "I'll let her come out now." Cho Cheng's eyes trembled as he replied nervously. Then, he put his hands together and formed a strange seal. Then, a rune appeared in the void. It seemed to be some kind of signal and disappeared instantly. Nye Tian's expression darkened when he saw this. He could tell that Cho Cheng was informing someone. "Nye Tian, Mo Rushi will come out soon. Don't be rash." Cho Cheng looked at Nye Tian and said with trembling eyes. Nye Tian smiled coldly. He extended his divine sense and sensed all the fluctuations in the void. He wasn't worried that Cho Cheng would play any tricks. If there was any strange movement, he would kill Qian Longxia without hesitation. Boom! A moment later, a loud explosion was heard in the hall below. Then a ray of light shot into the sky. Then a huge ball of light appeared and rose slowly like the sun. Nye Tian looked down and saw that 7 black-robed martial artists were standing around the huge glowing sphere in some kind of spell formation, as if they were guarding the glowing sphere. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. The 7 martial artists in black had strong auras. They were all heaven rhythm martial artists. Moreover, their auras were far stronger than Cho Cheng's and not much weaker than Qian Longxia's. Then, Nye Tian turned his attention to the huge ball of light. The ball of light was more than 100 meters in diameter. It was like a fireball and constantly released a blinding light. Outside the ball of light, there was a layer of mysterious runes. It was very strange. He used his divine sense to probe, but couldn't see what was inside the ball of light. His divine sense was connected to the eternal night demon fox, so his perception was very strong. He couldn't help but be surprised that he couldn't see what was inside the ball of light. What was inside the ball of light? Nye Tian's face sank when he didn't see Mo Rushi. A cold light flashed in his eyes. Nye Tian, Mo Rushi is inside the starry forbidden space. Cho Cheng seemed to sense Nye Tian's killing intent and said nervously, "Starry forbidden space?" Nye Tian was stunned. He looked at the huge ball of light with a gloomy gaze. It turned out that the ball of light was called the starry forbidden space. Mo Rushi seemed to be imprisoned in the starry forbidden space by Qian Longxia and the others. At that moment, the starry forbidden space slowly rose into the sky and released a blinding light like the sun. Nye Tian felt a very strong barrier aura outside the starry forbidden space, which made his heart tremble. Mo Rushi was imprisoned in the barrier. What were Qian Longxia and the others trying to do? Nye Tian, don't worry. Mo Rushi is very safe inside the barrier. Cho Cheng's eyes flickered and his voice trembled. Very safe, Nye Tianling laughed. He wouldn't believe Cho Cheng's nonsense. Lady Astrologer. At that moment, The 7 black-clothed martialists guarding outside the starry forbidden space cried out in shock when they saw Qian Longxie being controlled by Nie Tian. Qian Longxie's eyes were trembling, but he couldn't say anything. "Xiao Cheng, what's going on?" One of the black-clothed martialists looked at Xiao Cheng and asked Xiao Cheng coldly. 7-star apostles, don't worry. Lady Astrologer will be fine. Xiao Cheng's face was covered in cold sweat. He looked at Nie Tian and said, "Nie Tian, now that Mo Rushi is out, you should let Lady Astrologer go. Let her go." Nie Tian's eyes darkened. He sneered and said, "When did I say I would let her go? Besides, I only saw the starry forbidden space. I didn't see Mo Rushi." "You." Xiao Cheng's eyes flickered. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. At that moment, a star apostle stepped forward and looked at Nie Tian coldly. He asked coldly, "Brat, are you Nie Tian?" Obviously, they had heard of Nie Tian's name before. These 7 black-clothed martialists were star apostles in the Myriad Star Pavilion. Star apostles and star envoys had similar statuses. They were both below astrologer. However, star envoys had specific astrologers, while star apostles had no specific astrologer. The 7-star apostles obviously hadn't expected Qian Longxie to be controlled by Nie Tian. "If you don't want Qian Longxie to die, then let me see everything in the starry forbidden space," Nie Tian said, cold without answering the star apostle's question. As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward. Suddenly, the sword intent surrounding Qian Longxie's body became violet. Chapter 34-36. Chapter 34-31. Chapter 34-31 Mother Ritual Array. Seeing that Nie Tian was really going to kill Qian Longxie, that star disciple was so scared that his eyes trembled, and he screamed, "Don't kill Lord Star Division!" Nie Tian's eyes were extremely cold. It didn't look like he was threatening Qian Longxie at all. He really wanted to kill Qian Longxie. "Since you won't let me kill her, then let me see everything within the star forbidden space," Nie Tian said with a solemn expression. "This." The star apostle's face stiffened and became very unsightly. He said, "Once the star forbidden space is opened, it will isolate all external disturbances, and outsiders will not be able to see inside. Even we can't see what's happening in the star forbidden space." "Is that so?" Nie Tian's eyes turned cold, and his killing intent instantly became sharp. "Wait a minute." The star apostle screamed again as he sensed that Nie Tian's killing intent had increased. "I don't have time to waste with you." Nie Tian's face was filled with killing intent as he said, "I'll say it one last time. I want to see everything inside the star forbidden space." He had not killed Qian Longxie because he wanted to see Mo Rushi. However, he was now in a star forbidden space. He didn't even know if Mo Rushi was inside the star forbidden space. If he couldn't see Mo Rushi, then there was no need for Qian Longxie to live. 7-star apostles, you should know who the Nephrite astrolabe is. She can't die, Xiao Cheng said anxiously to the 7-star apostles. Qian Longxie was a star administrator, and his position in the Myriad Stars Pavilion was not low. She had another identity that was far more terrifying than a star administrator. If she were to die here, not only would Xiao Cheng die, the 7-star disciples would die too. Nie Tian, we will now weaken the barrier outside the star forbidden space. As for whether you can see Mo Rushi in the star forbidden space, it will depend on how strong your perception is. The 7-star apostles looked at each other before one of them took a step forward and said in a deep voice. The forbidden star space was like an array formation. Once it was activated, it would be very difficult to stop. One could only wait for the forbidden star space to stop on its own. At that moment, the only thing the 7-star disciples could do was to temporarily weaken the barrier outside the star forbidden space. Even so, only people with powerful perception could see what was happening in the star forbidden space. "Do it." Nie Tian's face was gloomy as he spat out 2 words coldly. His perception far surpassed that of ordinary people. As long as the barrier outside the star forbidden space weakened slightly, he would be able to sense everything that was happening inside. The 7-star apostles nodded solemnly. Without hesitation, they took action. The 7 of them released runes that enveloped the star-forbidden space and affected the barrier outside. Why is the energy released by these people so similar to star runes? Nietian could not help but frown as he sensed the rune energy released by the 7 star apostles. The aura of the runes released by the 7 star apostles was very similar to the star runes. However, upon closer inspection, they were completely different from star runes. It seemed like those runes were forged star runes. Nietian felt strange, but he didn't think too much about it. After a while, he sensed that the barrier outside the star-forbidden space had weakened slightly. He immediately used his divine sense to check it out. However, the star-forbidden space was like an airtight world. It was difficult for his divine sense to penetrate it. Nietian focused his divine sense. Soon, beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. However, at that moment, his divine sense finally penetrated the star-forbidden space. The scene inside the star-forbidden space slowly became clearer. Following this, Nietian finally understood everything inside the star-forbidden space. The entire space was filled with the power of runes, which was extremely strange. At the center of the space, a figure was lying there. She seemed to be unconscious and was breathing evenly. Rushi. When Nietian saw the face of the figure, his eyes could not help but tremble. He couldn't help but exclaim. The figure was none other than Mo Rushi. Mo Rushi was lying there. Her aura was stable, and the life force in her body was very strong. It seemed like everything was normal. Nietian frowned. His expression did not look good. He vaguely had an ominous feeling, as if something bad was going to happen soon. He sensed Mo Rushi's aura and soon discovered that the runes in the star-forbidden space were slowly seeping into Mo Rushi's body. At the same time, the other life force in Mo Rushi's body was growing stronger. Nietian's expression changed when he noticed this. The ominous feeling in his heart grew stronger. The other life force in Mo Rushi's body was obviously the fetus in her womb, the child she and Nietian had. The runes in the star-forbidden space were actually strengthening the life force of the fetus and strengthening its power. Is this star-forbidden space harming our child? Nietian's eyes flickered. His first thought was that the power of the runes in the star-forbidden space was harming his and Mo Rushi's child. Perhaps the runes were some kind of curse that was merging with the fetus's body. Thinking of this, Nietian's eyes trembled. His eyes suddenly turned red, and he looked like he was about to go berserk. How could these animals have the heart to harm a fetus that was still in her womb? However, he forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart and continued to sense the runes in the star-forbidden space. He discovered that the runes seemed to be completely harmless. They were simply strengthening the fetus's power. What's going on? Nietian frowned, and his expression became strange. What were the people from the Myriad Star Pavilion doing? It seemed like they were helping the child in Mo Rushi's womb increase its power. What was their purpose in doing this? At that moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly sounded. After letting out a cry, he was stunned and could not make a sound for a long time. Ghost Emperor, what did you find? Nietian's eyes trembled. His heart sank, and he asked anxiously. The Ghost Emperor was dazed for a few seconds before he came to his senses. His voice trembled as he said, Nietian, this star-forbidden space is a grandmother ritual array. Grandmother ritual array? Nietian was dazed for a moment. Nietian, do you know of innate godhead martial artists? The Ghost Emperor paused for a moment, calmed down, and suddenly asked, Innate godhead martial artists? Nietian's eyes widened, and his face darkened. Of course he knew of innate godhead martial artists. The so-called innate godhead referred to those martial artists who had condensed a godhead at birth. These martial artists' martial physiques were different from ordinary people. Their devouring ability was very strong. When they were still a fetus, they would directly devour their mother's power and then condense their godhead with their mother's power. In fact, these innate godhead martial artists had plundered their mother's power to condense their godhead, whereas these innate godhead martial artists' mothers would die immediately after they were born. Grandmother Ritual Array. Innate Godhead Martial Artists. At this time, Nyetian suddenly thought of something, and his face stiffened. Innate Godhead martial artists were fetuses who plundered their mother's power to condense their godhead. The meaning of the Grandmother Ritual Array was obvious. It was to sacrifice the mother. Grandmother Ritual Array. Sacrifice the mother. At this time, the Ghost Emperor's solemn voice sounded. These people want to use the Grandmother Ritual Array to make the fetus in Mo Rushi's womb devour Mo Rushi's power to nourish the fetus. The Myriad Star Pavilion's people actually wanted to sacrifice Mo Rushi to nourish the fetus in her womb. Chapter 34-37. Nyetian in the Darkness, Mother Sacrificial Array. Using the mother as a sacrifice. Nyetian's eyes flickered like flames when he heard the Ghost Emperor's words. His body burned like a volcano, releasing a violent aura. The blood in his body seemed to be boiling, and a terrifying aura circulated around his body. He had not expected the people from the Vanishing Shadow Temple and the Myriad Star Pavilion to be so vicious. The starry forbidden space turned out to be a mother sacrificial array, using Mo Rushi's power as a sacrifice to create the fetus in her womb. Such a method was clearly forcing the fetus to kill its mother. Cultivators with innate godheads would steal their mother's power to form godhead. Even if they were born with godly state strength, it was at the cost of their mother's sacrifice. If they had a choice, who would want to be a cultivator with innate godhead? However, the people from Myriad Star Pavilion were forcing a fetus to kill its mother. This method was too vicious. No wonder the starry forbidden runes had been strengthening the fetus power. The runes did not harm the fetus, but they were stimulating its devouring power to steal the mother's power. At that moment, the seven-star apostles saw the change in Nyetian's expression. His body was releasing a violent aura, and his eyes were bloodshot with murderous intent. They were surprised and transmitted their voices to each other. That brat is actually able to see everything that's happening in the starry forbidden space. How could his perception be so powerful? Judging from his expression, could he have seen through the mother sacrificial array? Impossible. This kid is so young, and he's not an array master. There's no way he could have seen through the mother sacrificial array. As the few star apprentices discussed with each other, strong killing intent gradually appeared in their eyes as they looked at Nyetian. All of a sudden, Nyetian let out a piercing howl. Immediately after, sword intent shot out of his body like a rain of arrows, slamming into the void, so much so that even the space was about to be torn apart. Seeing Nyetian suddenly going berserk, the seven-star disciples were taken aback, and their expressions flickered. Is this kid crazy? Bang! In the next moment, a dull thud was heard. Qian Longxia's body shook and broke free from the sword intent around him. Then, his figure flickered, and he retreated a few thousand meters away. The sudden scene caused Nyetian to let out a cry of surprise. He abruptly turned around to look at Qian Longxia. His eyes were dark red, like a pair of blood moons, and a cold, murderous aura filled the surrounding tens of thousands of meters. Kill him. At that moment, Qian Longxia bellowed and continued to retreat. She took advantage of the time when Nyetian was not paying attention to accumulate her strength and finally broke through the sword intent imprisonment. However, Nyetian's eye power attack had not only severely injured her, it had also weakened her martial body. At this moment, she no longer had the strength to fight. Yes, the eyes of the seven-star apostles trembled, but they immediately reacted and responded in unison. They then locked their cold gazes on Nyetian. Just now, Qian Longxia was in Nyetian's hands, making them very apprehensive and unable to make a move. Now that Qian Longxia had broken free from Nyetian's control, the seven-star apostles no longer had any scruples and could attack without worry. Nyetian, how dare you take me as a hostage? You are dead. Qian Longxia retreated tens of thousands of meters away and looked at Nyetian from afar. Her beautiful eyes were filled with murderous intent. She was a noble star apostle, a peerless genius of the Thousand Stars Pavilion. Ever since she was young, she had been superior. She had never thought that one day she would become someone's hostage. What was even more unacceptable was that the person who threatened her life was a pseudo-sacred martial artist from a territory. At that moment, she wanted to skin Nye Tian alive and grind his bones into ashes. However, she was severely injured and could not do anything, so she had to let the Seven-Star Apostles do it. Although the Seven-Star Apostles were not as powerful as Qian Longxie, they were much more powerful than Xiao Cheng. Each of them had the strength of the 5th stage Heaven Rhythm, which was enough to kill a rank 9 pseudo-sacred martial artist. Kill! At that moment, one of the Star Apostles roared. Then, he dashed out like a ray of light and slammed his palm forward. A line of fire appeared in the air and instantly spread into a sea of fire, burning wildly in the void and pressing down on Nye Tian. Nye Tian felt the scorching heat coming toward him. His eyes suddenly darkened, and a cold light flashed in his eyes like that of a vicious wolf. The next moment, he moved at an extremely fast speed. Every step he took caused the void to tremble violently. The Star Apostle was shocked to see Nye Tian charging toward him. He had fought countless people, but he had never seen a martial artist charge forward so fiercely. Did Nye Tian think of himself as a ferocious beast? Boom! At that moment, Nye Tian's figure suddenly appeared. He had passed through the sea of fire with his flesh and blood. You? At that moment, the Star Apostle saw Nye Tian's appearance clearly. His pupils contracted, and he was so shocked that he couldn't even finish his sentence. Nye Tian was surrounded by demonic qi. His eyes were dark and bloodshot, like two abysses filled with murderous intent and demonic qi. At that moment, Nye Tian didn't look like a human, but like a demon who had walked out of the endless hell. Go to hell. Then, a pair of black wings appeared on Nye Tian's back. They were formed by the combination of demonic qi and star energy. Then he moved at an extremely fast speed, leaving a trail of demonic qi in the void. This extremely strange scene caused everyone's eyes to tremble, and they were shocked to the point of being speechless. Crack! The next moment, they saw Nye Tian's figure descend to the side of the Star Apostle. He reached out his hand and grabbed the Star Apostle's neck, lifting him up high. The Star Apostle let out a miserable cry. He was like a little sheep under the claws of a wolf, completely defenseless. Young man, let him go. The other 6 Star Apostles exclaimed in unison after they realized what was going on. Bang! However, as soon as they finished speaking, the Star Apostle's body shook violently and exploded in Nye Tian's hand, turning into a pool of blood. A 5th-tier Heaven Rhythm martial artist was killed just like that, in a way that no one had expected. Such a bloody scene was too shocking. Qian Longxie and Xiao Cheng stood there like 2 wooden dummies. Tang 13 and Huang Wujiang were also stunned. They looked at Nye Tian in shock, feeling that Nye Tian was so strange at that moment. Nye Tian stood there, surrounded by surging demonic qi, giving off an extremely oppressive aura. It seemed that when Nye Tian was in a state of rage, a powerful dark force had awakened in his body, making him extremely terrifying. What are you waiting for? Kill him. Qian Longxie came to his senses and shouted. Chapter 34-38. Fiend God Bang. 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 High up in the sky, numerous terrifying auras roared and charged towards Nye Tian like raging dragons. Nye Tian killed a Star Apostle in an instant, showing the other Star Apostles how terrifying he was. The 6 Star Apostles unleashed their heavenly rhythm force without holding back. All 6 of them were at least in the 5th stage of Heaven Rhythm. They unleashed their full power, causing the air around them to rumble. These guys are so scary. Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost Boundless retreated under the impact of the powerful force in the air. Their eyes were filled with shock. They finally realized how terrifying a heavenly rhythm martial artist could be. Would Nye Tian be able to fend off the joint attacks of 6 Heaven Rhyme cultivators at or above the 5th level of Heaven Rhyme? At that moment, Nye Tian suddenly raised his head. His dark and bloody eyes were extremely terrifying and vicious. Bang! In the next moment, his body shook, and a dark aura was released, soaring into the sky. A dark force appeared outside his body, like a surging dark cloud, coiling around his body. Buzz! Following that, the dark force let out a deep roar in the sky. A terrifying, demonic figure appeared outside of Nietion's body. The demonic figure was 10,000 meters tall. It stood between heaven and earth like a mountain in the middle of storm. Qianlongxia's eyes began to tremble uncontrollably upon seeing this. She sensed a great threat from the demonic figure, causing her to tremble uncontrollably, as if she was about to drop to her knees. The demonic figure was like an ancient god. Its aura soared into the sky, looking down on everything and killing everything. Qianlongxia could not believe his eyes. How could a ninth-rank pseudo-sacred martial artist have such terrifying power? Wasn't Nietion chosen by the Star Origin Stone? Wasn't he the future Star Sacred Leader? How could there be such a dark force inside his body? Bang! 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 At this moment, the 6 violent attacks landed on the gigantic demonic shadow. However, the attacks were shattered right away, unable to cause any damage to the demonic shadow. How is this possible? The figures of the 6 star apostles were pushed back by the impact of the tremendous force. They steadied themselves and looked at Nietion in shock. They were 5th-layer heavenly aura holy disciples, and the 6 of them had unleashed 30 surges of heavenly aura at the same time. On the other hand, Nietion was only a 9th-order pseudo-sacred realm cultivator. Just what kind of power did he unleash to resist 30 surges of heavenly aura? "You all deserve to die," Nietion roared. His eyes were as dark as the abyss, gleaming with a cold light. After that, he moved, and with every step he took, the entire space trembled. Waves of terrifying demonic chi surged in the void, causing the entire world to seem a lot smaller. Boom! Nietion punched out, and a huge amount of demonic energy condensed into a dark fist shadow, which caused the void to tremble. Nietion then punched out at a star apostle. No! The star apostle's face turned pale with fright. He screamed in pain, but it was too late. He could feel the terrifying power of the dark strangulation pressing down on him and sealing the space around him. Bang! The next moment, the star apostle was killed by the fist shadow before he could even put up any resistance. Not even his bones were left. The other star apostles were stunned by the scene in front of them, and their faces turned pale as a sheet. They had never imagined that Nietion would be so violent. Was the person who was fighting with them really just a 9th-order pseudo-sacred warrior? The power of the celestial demon in verse mark is indeed powerful. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor was extremely shocked. The reason why Nietion was so terrifying was because he had unleashed the power of the celestial demon inverse mark. Back at the 9 mysterious blood spring, when Nietion activated the celestial demon body, the celestial demon inverse mark appeared on his arm. At this moment, the celestial demon inverse mark appeared all over his body, and Nietion used the celestial demon inverse mark to form the celestial real body. Nietion was too terrifying. This was the second time he had used the celestial demon inverse mark to form the celestial real body. Although these star apostles were powerful, they could not resist the celestial real body at all. However, the Ghost Emperor knew that the greater the power of the celestial real body, the greater the pressure on Nietion's martial body. The Ghost Emperor was even worried that when the celestial real body could no longer be maintained, Nietion might explode and die. Kill! At that moment, Nietion let out a thunderous roar that reverberated through the void like a thunderclap, filled with ruthlessness and darkness. Boom! Boom! In the void, wherever the celestial real body passed, the space shook as if it was about to collapse. The star apostles were completely scared out of their wits, and they stood there like wooden pillars. In the void, wherever the celestial real body passed, there was blood everywhere. In just the blink of an eye, all the star apostles had been killed. This. Qian Longxie was dumbfounded. He took a deep breath, and his delicate face became very ugly. He had never expected that all 7-star apostles would be killed by Nie Tian. How could Nie Tian be so powerful? The other martial artists around him were also petrified. The fear in their hearts was clearly written on their faces. Meanwhile, after killing the 7-star apostles, Nie Tian fixed his eyes on the starry forbidden space. He walked toward the starry forbidden space one step at a time. What is he going to do? Qian Longxie looked at Nie Tian and exclaimed in his heart, "Break!" At that moment, Nie Tian suddenly let out a furious roar. His fiend god true form moved, and he threw a punch towards the forbidden starry sky. He was going to break the starry forbidden space by force. Boom! In the next instant, the celestial real body's fist landed on the starry forbidden space like a giant mountain. The void rumbled, and the surrounding space cracked. However, the starry forbidden space was not damaged at all. The runes were flowing, and there was not a single crack. The starry forbidden space was essentially the mother sacrificial formation. Although the formation did not cover a large area, it was extremely sturdy and could withstand the attacks of a supreme sacred martialist. Even if Nie Tian had formed the celestial real body, his strength would not be comparable to a supreme sacred martialist's. It was impossible for him to break the starry forbidden space by force. Is this guy crazy? Qian Longxie looked at Nie Tian from afar. His eyes were trembling, and his heart was filled with shock. However, Nie Tian did not stop. Boom, boom, boom. Explosions rang out incessantly in the void. The fiend god true body bombarded the star forbidden space again and again, but it was unable to cause the slightest damage to the star forbidden space. This. Qian Longxie and the others were dumbfounded. They could feel the vibrations in the void, and they were too shocked to speak. The way they saw it, Nie Tian was truly out of his mind and was trying to do something hopeless. Chapter 34-39, 3434. Never give up. Bang, bang, bang. Terrifying explosions could be heard continuously in the sky. Surges of violent forces wreaked havoc in the space, causing the wind and clouds to surge and the heavens and earth to tremble. Star Supervisor, is this guy crazy? Qiu Cheng could not help but ask in a low voice as he looked at Qian Longxie's side. Qian Longxie frowned and her face darkened. She could not help but tremble. Nie Tian's current actions were no longer ridiculous or crazy to her, but shocking. Nie Tian was not crazy. He knew that the starry forbidden space was indestructible and unbreakable. However, he couldn't give up. He had to break open the starry forbidden space because the person in the starry forbidden space was his wife, his child, and the people he loved the most. Nie Tian. Tang 13 and Huang Wujiang stared at Nie Tian from afar with complicated expressions, not knowing what to say. Break for me. At that moment, Nie Tian let out a roar. Surges of bloody aura gushed out from the real celestial demon body, and the inverse celestial demon marks turned violet. Demonic chi filled the air, as if it was going to devour the heavens and earth. At that moment, Nie Tian had ignited his own blood chi to activate the inverse celestial demon marks to unleash an even stronger force. Rumble. Immediately after, the celestial real body's aura skyrocketed to the extreme, and a powerful punch landed heavily on the forbidden star space. Suddenly, a violent force surged out and spread in all directions. The crazy aura was like a landslide and a tsunami. Qian Longxie's eyes flickered in astonishment. The power that Nie Tian had unleashed was too terrifying and unbelievable. Even if she unleashed all 9 heavenly auras at the same time, she would not be able to defend herself. A berserk Nie Tian was simply too terrifying. Crack! At that moment, a crisp tearing sound could be heard in the sky, as if something had been torn apart. How is this possible? Qian Longxie's pupil shrank. Her first thought was that the forbidden star space had been broken, which shocked her. The power that Nie Tian displayed was indeed very strong. However, it was still far from enough to break open the star forbidden space. Crack, crack, crack. In the next moment, a series of tearing sounds rang out, and countless cracks appeared on the fiend god true body. Just now, it was not that the star-forbidden space had been broken, but that the fiend god true body had been unable to withstand the rebound force, and had been forcefully shattered. Bang! In the next instant, a muffled sound rang out, and Nietion's figure was sent flying. While he was still in midair, the god-fiend true body outside his body shattered. His figure drew a bloody arc in the air, and like a kite with a broken string, he fell down. Nietion. Tang 13 and the boundless ghost desolation let out exclamations at the same time, and immediately sprang into action, dashing towards Nietion. It's impossible to save him. At the same time, Qiu Cheng let out a roar, and his figure moved. He slammed his palm toward Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost. He had been severely injured by Nietion, but he was still a heavenly rhythmic warrior. After recovering for a while, the power he could unleash was more than enough to kill a peak pseudo-Sacred Realm warrior. Die! Just then, Tang 13's figure paused in midair. Cole growled and turned around. Her eyes turned as dark as the abyss, and with a flicker, a terrifying power shot out of her and headed toward Qiu Cheng. Strange eyes. Qiu Cheng was startled, but he reacted quickly and screamed in shock. He did not expect Tang 13 to be a strange eyes martial artist too. Wretch. However, it was already too late. That terrifying eye power formed a dark blade in the air and pierced through the palm shadow in the air. Then, it pierced through Qiu Cheng's heart. Qiu Cheng's eyes glazed over. His body trembled and his life force disappeared. Tang 13 had killed him in one blow. Seeing this, Qian Longxie's eyes widened in disbelief. How could he have known that even a warrior by Nietion's side was so powerful? Tang 13 had killed Qiu Cheng in one blow, not only because Qiu Cheng's strength was greatly reduced due to his injury, but also because of his terrifying strength. His ghost eye had evolved to the absolute Yin ghost eye. More importantly, he had merged with the holy demon extermination seal. When his power was fully charged, the power he could unleash was terrifying. Nietion. After killing Qiu Cheng, Tang 13's figure flashed and reappeared beside Nietion and Desolate Ghost. Nietion was covered in blood. His body trembled, and he had to rely on Desolate Ghost's support to stand up. However, his eyes were fixed on the Forbidden Star space. The celestial true body formed by the inverse pattern of the celestial demon could not break the Forbidden Star space. But Nietion did not give up. He could not give up. He would not give up. Mo Rushi and his child were in the Forbidden Star space. How could he give up? Nietion, you... Tang 13 saw that Nietion was staring at the Forbidden Star space. She was in a difficult position and did not know what to say. Her strength was limited. She could not help Nietion at all. Ghost Arch, I want to release the 9th grade Chaos Beast. Nietion's face was solemn. His eyes were as deep as the abyss. 9th grade Chaos Beast. The Ghost Arch was stunned. His face froze. He had not expected Nietion to release the 9th grade Chaos Beast. However, the 9th grade Chaos Beast had been sealed by a mysterious woman who looked like Cher a long time ago. Nietion could not use it at all. Help me, Ghost Emperor, Nietion said with a grim look in his eyes. He believed that the Ghost Arch must have a way to let him release the 9th grade Chaos Beast. At this moment, he had no other choice but to release the 9th grade Chaos Beast. He had to save Mo Rushi, no matter what price he had to pay. No matter what the consequences would be after releasing the 9th grade Chaos Beast, or what enemies would be attracted, he did not care. At this moment, he only had one thought in his mind. Save Mo Rushi. Nietion. The Ghost Arch was silent for a few seconds. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. He did have a way to loosen the seal on the 9th grade Chaos Beast. However, he could not predict what the consequences would be. Even if the seal was loosened, it was not certain whether Nietion could release the 9th grade Chaos Beast. Do it. Nietion's body was weak, but his eyes were resolute. In order to save Mo Rushi, he would do anything. The ghost Tharch hesitated for a long time and finally nodded. Nietian was a crazy person. However, what he was doing this time was even crazier. Tang 13, Ghost Huang, don't let anyone near me, Nietian said in a deep voice. He sat down cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. In order to release the 9th grade Chaos Beast, he had to be fully focused. Tang 13 and Ghost Huang nodded solemnly. They stood on the left and right sides respectively, watching the others warily. At this moment, apart from Qianlong Xie, there were dozens of rank 9 pseudo-sage martialists and a group of martialists from Zhuiying Temple. These people looked at Niet Tian strangely. They did not know what he was doing. Chapter 3440. Chaos reappears. Qianlong Xie did not know why Niet Tian had suddenly entered a state of cultivation. She was worried that there was an even more terrifying power in Niet Tian's body. Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost stood beside Niet Tian, paying close attention to everyone around them. Even if they had to risk their lives, they would not let anyone near Niet Tian. Apart from Qianlong Xie, everyone present was not very strong. Qianlong Xie had been severely injured by Niet Tian and did not have the strength to fight. Therefore, it was not difficult for Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost to block them. Star Administrator, what should we do? At that moment, a martial artist came to Qianlong Xie's side and stared at Niet Tian coldly. It was obvious that he wanted to make use of this opportunity to attack Niet Tian. Qianlong Xie's eyes darkened as he glanced at the others behind him. They were all glaring at him and were ready to make a move. Qianlong Xie frowned and looked at the void in the distance with a strange expression. After a long silence, he waved his hand slightly, indicating for everyone not to act rashly. Today, the Myriad Star Pavilion had already lost 1-star envoy and 7-star apostles. The casualties were considered very high. As for Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost, they were obviously not ordinary people. Even if everyone present attacked together, they might not be able to gain the upper hand. Rather than fight to the death, they might as well wait. Qianlong Xie wanted to see if Niet Tian really had more heaven-defying tricks up his sleeves. The others were confused. Although they were unwilling, they did not dare to disobey Qianlong Xie and could only watch from the side. Tang 13 saw that Qianlong Xie had no intention of attacking and immediately relaxed. However, she saw that Qianlong Xie was looking at the void in the distance from time to time, as if he was waiting for someone. Could it be that more experts from the Myriad Star Pavilion were about to descend? At the same time, the Ghost Tharch began to slowly release his power. The seal on the 9-extremity Chaos Beast was slowly loosening. Niet Tian. The Ghost Tharch growled to remind Niet Tian. Loosening the seal would consume a lot of his mental strength. He was just a remnant soul and could not last long in this state. Niet Tian agreed and focused all his attention on the 9-extreme Chaos Beast. He kept using his mind power to awaken the beast. At that moment, Qianlong Xie sensed a terrifying aura inside Niet Tian's body, as if it was awakening. Her eyes began to tremble, and her heart was filled with astonishment. Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost also felt the aura coming from Niet Tian's body. They frowned and couldn't help but feel nervous. Bam! 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 At that moment, under Niet Tian's relentless spiritual attacks, the seal on the 9-extremity Chaos Beast started to break apart bit by bit. Terrifying waves of energy surged through Niet Tian's body. It was terrifying. At the same time, Niet Tian's body started to emanate a faint crimson aura, which made him look very strange. Niet Tian, the Ghost Emperor, couldn't hold on any longer and let out a low roar. Hold on a little longer, Niet Tian replied. His eyes suddenly released a surge of eye bloodline power that flowed across his body towards the 9-extremity Chaos Beast. The Ghost Emperor couldn't hold on any longer. He had no time left. He could only risk using his eye bloodline power to attack the seal. Bam! 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 The eye bloodline power attacked the seal in an instant, and the seal's symbols began to break apart. The 9-extremity Chaos Beast started to release a scarlet halo. Boom! At the same time, A blinding scarlet halo appeared around Nietian's body. It formed red ripples in the air and slowly spread. This aura... Qian Longxia stared at Nietian and felt the aura in the air. Her eyes trembled in disbelief. She had never expected this aura to be so terrifying. It was unimaginable. What kind of terrifying power was hiding inside Nietian's body? Bang! At that moment, a dull sound came from the chaotic origin coffin. The seal on the nine-extremity chaos beast finally couldn't withstand the eye bloodline power and shattered. Whoosh! In the next instant, a giant scarlet light surged out of Nietian's body like a tsunami. The light was like the sun, and it lit up the sky like a sunset. Boom! At that moment, the air started to tremble, as if it was trembling under the pressure of a terrifying power. What kind of power is this? The surrounding martial artists shuddered when they saw this. A sense of fear rose from the bottom of their hearts. It was as if this was a natural fear of an unparalleled ruler. Roar! In the next moment, a deep and vigorous roar rang out. Immediately, the crimson light around Nietian condensed into a giant crimson beast, which threw its head back and roared with a vigorous aura, as if it was declaring that it was the ruler of this world. This! Tang 13 and Desolate Ghost were the closest to Nietian. They suddenly felt their souls tremble. They screamed in fear and backed away. This is Nietian's primordial soul. After Tang 13 steadied herself, she stared at the red beast and shrieked in shock. Then she was speechless. The giant scarlet beast was Nietian's primordial soul, the nine-extremity chaos beast. Back in the 3,000 small worlds, Tang 13 had seen Nietian use the nine-extremity chaos beast. Back then, the nine-extremity chaos beast was very small. It was only a few dozen meters long. Now, the nine-extreme chaos beast was already a huge beast. Its body was already thousands of meters long, and it stood in the void like a mountain of flames suspended in midair. Tang 13 didn't expect that Nietian would release his primordial soul at this moment. A martial artist's primordial soul was usually abandoned after they reached the godly state. Other than some martial artists with spiritual weapons, no other martial artist would use their primordial souls. However, Nietian's primordial soul was not abandoned. Instead, it grew stronger and more terrifying. The boundless Desolate Ghost looked at the nine-extreme chaos beast, his eyes filled with shock. Roar! At this time, the nine-extremity chaos beast roared. The surrounding sky shook as if it couldn't withstand its power and was about to collapse in the next moment. Under the impact of this power, the surrounding people retreated. Little Nine, tear the star, forbidden space. Nietian stood up and took a step forward. Standing on the nine-extremity chaos beast's head, he shouted in a low voice. Roar! The nine-extremity chaos beast roared. Its huge body moved and rushed toward the star forbidden space. Boom! 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 Wherever the scarlet figure passed, the void would shatter. The next moment, the nine-extremity chaos beast stretched out a huge claw and grabbed at the star forbidden space. Although the star forbidden space was sturdy, it might not be able to withstand a blow from the nine-extremity chaos beast. Qian Longxia's eyes trembled. He was extremely shocked. He could almost see the scene of the nine-extremity chaos beast tearing the star forbidden space apart. Boom! However, at this time, the sky in the distance suddenly shook. Then, a space-time crack appeared. Lord Taibai jinxing. Qian Longxia saw the space-time crack. His eyes trembled as he shouted in surprise.